Good evening. I'd like to call the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 7 o'clock p.m. It's actually 7:02 for at Minnetonka Regional High School IRC, and also a Zoom webinar as well too. Public is invited to attend in person or participate via Zoom. Members of the committee and public are invited to access the meeting via Zoom. Remote meeting technology such as Zoom and the necessary access information we posted prior to the meeting. The video of the Zoom meeting will be posted on the district website as soon as able. I'd like to call this meeting to order if I could, please. I'd like to start off first by welcoming our newest school committee member, Lisa Murray. Welcome for your very first meeting. And Lisa, if I can ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and opening up our meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice work on that. As an educator. Okay, so we have need for public comment. Kate, did we have any sign up remotely? Okay, so we're going to just go right in order. For those that signed up in person, and I do have it here if there's someone else that would like to sign up. First, Tara, if we can ask you to join us, please. Tara Koza. And Tara, when you come up, if you could just tell us your name and your address.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Hey, Tara.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Kozub, and I live here in Wilbraham at 6 Beechwood Drive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So good evening, everyone. I'm going to remain standing. My name is Tara Kozub, and I thank you for the opportunity to make public comment here again tonight. I was encouraged to see so many members of our community gathered at the last school committee meeting to voice their opinions on the idea of an equity audit in our district. As a community, we do not have to agree with one another to love and respect and hear one another. More than ever, thoughtful, reasoned, critical debate is necessary and important, and all opinions deserve to be heard and considered. As President John F. Kennedy remarked, we are not afraid to entrust the American people with unpleasant facts, foreign ideas, alien philosophies, and competitive values. For a nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. While I appreciated the opportunity to listen and learn from different perspectives a few weeks ago, I was particularly stunned and saddened by comments made by one member of our community who, and I quote, felt it necessary to speak publicly in response to comments made by me at the last school committee. That's 4 weeks ago. I will address what this person said in a moment, but I'd first like to recap just what it was that I said at that meeting that compelled this person to come forward and offer rebuttal to my public comment. So on June 10th, I stood before this committee to respectfully ask that you declare your position on critical race theory, which I was clear in stating is an evil, divisive ideology that is harmful to all children, white children, and children of color. I voiced my concern for all children and gave specific fact-based reasons for my concern for all children and powerful testimonies of educators who saw and experienced the harmful effects of this divisive ideology. I also respectfully asked you to declare your position on the 1619 project, the curriculum that is driven by theory and other such curricula that teach and even mandate our children to judge one another by the color of their skin and not the content of their
Great. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yep.
A premise antithetical to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream to cultivate and live in a world where his children and ours are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I provided a clear, concise definition of critical race theory from James Lindsay, critical race theory expert and founder of New Discourses. I provided an excerpt of a resignation letter from New Jersey Dwight Englewood school teacher Dana Stengel-Plow, chronicling her firsthand account of the harmful, divisive, stifling effects of critical race theory on all students and all faculty, and the culture of fear it creates in the student body and faculty within schools that adopt this damaging ideology. I provided the firsthand lived experiential testimony of Vermont psychotherapy professor Erin Kinsvater, warning of the dangerous psychological and emotional effects of CRT on our children. In response to my public comment encompassing the recap I just gave, this member of our community felt it necessary to speak publicly in opposition to what I had to say, a fair and reasonable goal. But her response to my public comment was not rooted in authentic, constructive, fact-based logic. Her comments were rooted in unauthentic and destructive conjecture and slander that had the potential to malign my good name and the good name of the many decent, hardworking members of this community who happen to agree with me. Did this person address or refute the fact-based warnings of critical race theory expert James Lindsay that I presented? No. The letter from the educator from New Jersey, the New Jersey teacher who resigned over critical race theory? No. The warnings of Erin Kinsvater of the University of Vermont, who warned of the harmful mental health effects of CRT on all children? No. Did this person specifically address any one of my points? No. Instead, this person stood here before you and used the racial slurs white supremacist and white supremacy 8 times in 3 minutes in response to my public comments. Here is an excerpt of her comment in reference to all those who reject CRT and equity audits in our community. What we have to fight against is white supremacy. These are the desperate attempts of white supremacy to maintain power and control. White supremacy is not a shark, it is in the water. White supremacy is not a shark, it is the water, pardon me. White supremacy asks us to remain stagnant. White supremacy will tell you that tolerance to differences is enough. In making such shameful comments in reference to those of us who oppose CRT, I would argue that this community member served as a living, breathing example of what James Lindsay means when he says, critical race theory begins from the assumption that racism occurs in all interactions. Maligning good people by labeling them white supremacists simply for voicing respectful, reasonable concern over an ideology that has been proven harmful to all children, white children and children of color, has become a worn out, tired, familiar tool of those who seek to silence constructive, thoughtful, reasonable, and well-reasoned debate around the issue of critical race theory. And tonight, I'm here to publicly say enough. I call upon the residents of the HWRSD to join me in saying enough. I will not be silenced or deterred by inauthentic, destructive, personal attacks designed to shut down debate or silence or smear critics of CRT and equity audits. Tonight, I ask you as a school committee to publicly repudiate the besmirching of my character by this person who referred to all those who reject CRT as white supremacists without a shred of evidence to back up her claims. This is unacceptable and violates the very rules you have on your website governing open comment protocol. Tonight, I ask you to reaffirm your commitment to respectful, reasonable, thoughtful debate in our community. Such maligning tactics should have no place in the HWRSD. Tonight, I ask you to stand with me. Pardon me, I ask you to stand with me in proclaiming a zero tolerance for the shameful, destructive, unauthentic tactic of slandering the good names of CRT opponents with the label white supremacist. This is disgraceful and destructive and deserves strong repudiation from anyone in the community who hears it. To anyone listening to me tonight who happens to agree with me, I have a message for you. Do not be deterred or dismayed by attempts to malign your good intentions or good name with false labels of white supremacy. Let us remember well the words of Great Britain's Iron Lady, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who once said, "I always cheer up immensely if an attack is particularly wounding, because I think, well, if they attack one personally, it means they have not a single political argument left." After the initial sting of hearing a member of our community use the racial slur white supremacist 8 times in reference to me and the good, hardworking people of our town, simply for voicing concern and asking questions, and after I listened to this person dismiss and belittle my well-researched information and firsthand accounts from experts and educators and the painstaking time I took to gather it as Fox News talking points, I soon cheered up immensely, realizing this person offered no viable arguments to dispel any of the important points I brought forward, and actually served as a living, breathing example of New Jersey Dwight Englewood school teacher Dana Stengel-Plow's warning. Their critical race theory fails to encourage healthy habits of mind, essential for growth, such as intellectual curiosity, humility, honesty, reason, and the capacity to question ideas and consider multiple perspectives. And her question, how can students, and I will add adults, develop higher order thinking if they are limited to seeing the world only through the lens of group identity and power? As James Lindsay reminds us, that's critical race theory. It can find racism in anything, even if it has to read your mind to do it. This person also helped illustrate an important distinction I made between equity and equality in my last public comment in June, in reference to the public comments of another, I'm so sorry, in June. As I mentioned last month, over the last year, we have heard the words equity and equality used interchangeably, which is a mistake, as equity and equality are antithetical to one another. Equality.
Just jump in for one quick second. This public comment is supposed to be 5 minutes per person.
I'm just about finished.
I was just gonna say,
Okay.
I want to make sure you get
Yeah.
all of your thoughts out, and if you could do that.
I
Thank
hear you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
No.
So
okay.
equality seeks equal opportunity while equity seeks equal outcome. In her appeal to you to move forward with an equity audit, this same person bemoaned the fact that while students who attended in-person full-time learning at the middle school were provided with donuts at the end of the year, those students who chose to remain full-time remote learners did not receive donuts. This is a very benign illustration of the problem with equity. It demands equal outcome, donuts for everyone. I'm just finishing up, whether you are in the classroom or not. On the other hand, it was equality, not equity, that gave the same parent and others the freedom to choose remote learning for their students, which provided them equal opportunity to learn in an environment that they believed was best for them. Equality says that we all have the right to choose which educational setting is best for our children. Equality says you as a parent have the right to organize a donut party with all your fellow remote learning parents to celebrate the end of the remote learning school year. On the other hand, equity says that if your child gets a donut at school, my child should get a donut as a remote learner. A benign example, I will admit, and maybe some of you are saying, what's the big deal? And I'm wrapping it up. Is that too much to ask? But the call for equity is a slippery slope that in the Wellesley public school system has quickly developed into the creation of 5 distinct segregated spaces within the school district. Public records confirm the district's use of, and I quote, affinity spaces dividing students and staff based on race. And so tonight I respectfully ask, if an equity audit compelled an auditor to recommend the use of segregated spaces within the HWRSD in the name of equity, would you comply? And in Milton, Massachusetts Public School District, as part of the district's equity audit conducted by a consulting company known as Cambridge Education, 6th through 12th graders were given a 91-question survey that included questions as, are you transgender, genderqueer, or gender fluid? Students as young as 6th grade were also asked if they identify as gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, aromantic, asexual, or questioning. And so tonight I respectfully ask, if an equity audit recommended a survey such as this be given to 6th graders in our district, would you comply? The call for equity is a slippery slope that has the Boston Public Schools suspending the test for advanced learning classes, and I quote, over concerns over the program's racial inequities that linger. And so I respectfully ask you tonight, if an equity auditor recommended the suspending of testing for advanced learning classes, or in the case in California, New York, and Virginia, the outright elimination of honors and AP classes in the name of equity, would you comply? I know I speak for many in this community in asking these questions, and I appreciate your willingness to hear and answer me in this regard. I realize I went over time, and I want to thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for allowing me this time. And I want to thank all of you. As always, I have links to every single thing that I said here that will back up the facts that I brought forward, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Joe Wallace. Can you just tell us your address?
Yeah, Joe Lawless, Ward Road.
Thank you.
I'm gonna sit. That's okay.
Absolutely. Sure.
At the June 10th school committee meeting, we heard members of the community speak on behalf of whether they supported or opposed critical race theory and the equity audit. When you heard members of the community speak, they gave personal experiences, they gave reasons why they may or may not support it. You know, listening and watching that meeting, it was very constructive debate. Unfortunately, the comments, thoughts, and feedback of those individuals in that meeting, all of them, were stained by the divisive, hateful comments of one community member. The community member know the biggest problem in our town is white supremacy. And you used the term white supremacy or white supremacist 8 times during public comment. This is both troubling and disappointing. We've heard members of the committee talk about working together, unity. We're all brothers and sisters. I've heard that multiple times here. Yet a member of this community is attempting to divide us. This is the one primary concern with critical race theory lens being placed upon everything that we do. It brings out divisive hatred. If you have an opposing opinion, you'll be characterized. Going back 2 months ago to the April 15th school committee meeting, this committee talked about the equity audit. More than at least 3 members of the committee pushed back, asked questions, weren't sure if we should do an equity audit. So I would ask, are members of the school committee then going to be used in this slandering terms? Because you push back, had an opposing opinion, want to give your feedback? If members of the community, the school committee members, don't think like, don't act like, don't speak like this political movement and ideology, we're now white supremacists. Is that the basis that we're going to be judged? This is so wrong in so many ways. The words of this community member only solidifies the position on the destructive, divisive nature of this approach to teaching kids. You know, and I'll say this, that I went back to that meeting. I listened to the students of the Diversity Council speak, and I made notes of the 5 students who spoke, and I wanted to just review. There were 5 things they asked for. And I think, you know, we need to listen to those kids and do the handful of things. This is not all about doing an equity audit. This is about strategy, and this is about tactical. And one of the ideas was having a person of color as a guidance counselor. Superintendent Al Ganem said he recognized the opportunity to bring more diversity to the district, and he would do anything he could to try to attract a more diverse talent base, but he will always select the best candidate for any position. I think that's fair. The diversity and training for the teachers, that we need more diversity and training for the teachers and the school committee. Cheryl mentioned that there's at least 4 training sessions been hosted. So I think we're all ahead of that. I think we're ahead of the curve. I think we're doing the right thing, and Al committed to continuing that. The curriculum, there were concerns raised regarding an Eurocentric lens on World War II. Al committed to working with a group of teachers this summer on the curriculum. A student felt that they didn't fit in and wanted a mentor that looked like them in the district. And I think, you know, this is a great idea. We should look at an approach of looking at administrators or teachers within the district and look at a mentoring program. I think that's a great idea. It's something we could do right away. It doesn't require an equity audit to make a decision like that. And lastly, a student felt uncomfortable and used the word discriminated against in high school sports. And to me, that should have been investigated immediately here in high school. That should have a principal and people involved that, you know, if this was in a workplace, there would be an unbiased, confidential investigation into those claims, right? So I think we need to take a step back here and understand, you know, some of these terms and things being used, the severity of what those things are, and understand it. Lastly, I'll say that, you know, the point of me reviewing these concerns is we can get these things fixed today. There's some strategic and tactical things today we can do to improve diversity and inclusion in the school district. And I also would oppose the member of the community who spoke last week that said people don't want diversity and inclusion who are against critical race theory. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. I did come prepared to provide something that I think would improve our diversity and inclusion within the school district. I don't have enough copies for everybody, but I'll pass it out. I think 5 copies. But this is you know, something that major businesses use. It's a diversity and inclusion calendar. A company called Diversity Resource has these calendars. The reason I bring this up is because school districts in New Jersey, I think it was 2 or 3 of them, which looked at holidays and said that because some students didn't celebrate any of the holidays on the calendar, they would remove all holidays from the calendar in the name of inequity, right? So the idea was that all holidays just say day off. So I think we should instead celebrate our differences and celebrate our different cultures rather than shut off doing these types of things that encourage an inclusive brothers and sisters in the community mentality. So I only present this, I think this will be something, we could talk about these things every month. For instance, the month of May is, if you didn't know, it's Caribbean American Heritage Month. I have a number of Caribbean Americans who work within my business unit, and they didn't even know it, and I'm talking to them about and celebrating it. So a lot of workplaces use things like this, but again, I think we should celebrate our differences, not decide that we're not going to have anything to ever celebrate. And that's my thoughts. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Next, Tracy Farnsworth.
Hey, Trace.
Hi. My name is Tracy Farnsworth. I live on Red Bridge Road in Wilbraham. Once again, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. My name is Tracy Farnsworth. I'm a resident of Wilbraham and have lived in the community for the past 11 years. My daughter attended Wilbraham schools and graduated from Minnetrog. I have a degree in psychology and education and graduated from the Elms. I personally have been involved in education for the past 22 years, working in special education in multiple school districts. Currently, I am a developmental specialist and behavior therapist for a nonprofit early intervention agency. As a parent, educator, and resident, I am deeply concerned about our district's potential foray into an equity audit. My understanding is that there has been no vote taken authorizing an equity audit. However, there have been promises made that it will be done. It would be beneficial for residents to know the status. Is this correct? Some of my concerns regarding a potential equity audit, in no particular order, are: where is this significant cost, a probable $150,000 plus coming from? This was not funded in any budget request. Will the town finance committee be consulted before authorizing such unplanned expenditure? Why wouldn't the strategic plan, which is currently being discussed and long overdue, not be completed, excuse me, prior to any discussions about this costly audit, as the strategic plan may change multiple factors within the district that would invalidate any such audit? The entire concept of an equity audit is troubling, as it is based in critical race theory and is the beginning of creating a divisive environment and culture. One of the tenets of critical race theory is, quote, those who oppose replacing the equality of all citizens under the law with a system of, quote, equity, unquote, that treats people unequally based on racial categories are complicit in racism, end quote. As stated by the editors of The American Mind, quote, all Americans of goodwill and common sense must oppose the spread of this pernicious ideology. We reject the following tenets of critical race theory, and I would add, by an extension, an equity audit, as directly opposed to the fundamental principles of American government and political order. That any human being, simply by virtue of being born in a given racial category, sure as their whiteness, is inherently evil or bears guilt for actions committed by others in the past or present. That the principle of the inherent equality and dignity of all human beings, insofar as they are human, enables racism instead of serving as the firmest bulwark against it. That establishing a legal regime of racial hierarchies is equitable or just. Human beings are fundamentally equal insofar as they are human and citizens and must be treated as such by law. Blaming groups of citizens for evils they did not commit based on their race, color, or ethnicity is morally wrong and will result in civil disorder and balkanization. A system based on, quote, equity, unquote, in which equity means rejecting equality under the law and distributing goods and services on the basis of race alone, is neither equitable nor just. Government and public institutions must not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to persons on the basis of race, color, or ethnicity, end quote. I believe that an equity audit will only serve to cause a divide in our community and our schools. We have school administrators who should be in touch with their staff and be reviewing their performance regularly. If a staff member or teacher is currently found to not be treating and teaching each individual student fairly and unbiased, they should be dealt with swiftly and decisively to ensure our educators are being held to the highest standard. An equity audit is implying that our school administration does not have knowledge or control over what is happening in our classrooms. We, as a community, expect our school administrators to hold each building principal and teacher to the standard of a fair and unbiased education now. An equity audit is unquestionably counterproductive to this goal. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. Next, Christine Goonan.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Goonan. I live at 13 Scenic Drive, Wilbraham. The first three people who spoke tonight have their opinions about critical race theory, but I want to read to you what the Massachusetts School Committee Association has published about what really critical race theory really is. But I'm going to say personally, from the last three people who spoke, they were emotional and passionate, but they also sensing some fear, and that's unfortunate. But what is critical race theory? Critical race theory is a framework and or an analytical tool primarily used in university level courses, K through 12. Originating in the 1970s, CRT was first used as a way to help law students, again, specified students learning particularly about the law that governs this country, think critically about the impact of historical and present day racism on the legal basis, as just was mentioned by the last speaker about our laws that protect people for jobs and for opportunities. In the 1990s, some colleges of education also started incorporating CRT into their coursework to help aspiring school administrators, as our first three speakers were talking about, administrators having this control and being able to be critical thinkers about what's happening in their schools, and teachers better understand inequities in the context of education. Let's kind of take a deep breath and think about that. What it isn't. Critical race theory is not part of any social studies curriculum. It has never been part of a social studies curriculum frameworks in Massachusetts. And what basically critical race theory is not part of a conversation in Massachusetts in any educational setting anywhere, anywhere. And for the first three people to start stirring up this idea that CRT is going to be part of some issue here in Hamden, Wilbraham, is false. And unfortunately, they're stirring up fear, and fear is not good because it makes people do things that they otherwise would not do. The Massachusetts School Committee also mentioned that media channels and members of the public are confusing some key terms. And it's important to note that the terms critical race theory and educational equity are not the same and shouldn't be used interchangeably. Unfortunately, the first three people were using them interchangeably. I just wanted to read that. I know the members of the school committee have already received it. As the leadership of the state, as Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, this conversation about CRT should not be happening here in Wilbraham because it has nothing to do with what's going on in our schools. The equity audit, from what I understand, is to look at our curriculum to make sure, as one of the speakers said, one student said he didn't have someone he or she could relate to, is to make sure children, when they're in the context of their curriculum, can identify with the content and say, oh, that character looks like me, sounds like me, it can be me. And that's our goal, is to make every child, when they come to school, to say they can reach for the stars and be the best they can be. Unfortunately, there have been students that came to you saying that isn't happening. And that's unfortunate. And I hope as a school committee, we will look at some sort of deep dive, look into how we engage every student and have every single student feel that they're valued and that they'll be successful and that their teachers, their educators have got them and they're going to support them throughout their 13 years here, or 14 if we start a full pre-K program. And that's my love and goal. I'm also an educator here, and my goal is to make sure every single child that comes through my classroom door knows that I've got them and they can reach for the stars. And I hope they all do. I hope they all get on to the next ship to Mars and they call me back and tell me that they're there. But thank you very much for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine. Next, Richard Howell.
I'd like to thank the school committee for the opportunity. Mr. Superintendent, my name is Richard Howell. I wanted to speak tonight on the issue at hand. It seems to be gathering a lot of steam. Of course, if you have a child in the district, which I don't, or if you're just a resident, it's something that you ought to weigh in on. Everybody ought to weigh in on it, not let it go. It's the worst thing that can happen. With the advent last year by the MTA, the Board of the Massachusetts Department of Education and other related Commonwealth-wide educational groups dealing with something very similar, a curriculum. A letter last year was signed by several parents and residents in both Hamden and Wilbraham. Unfortunately, it was ignored. There were different copies that were sent to the committee. Now, all of a sudden, we're facing something called critical race theory and the equity audit. This also alleges systematic racism and prejudice among the white population against all other races for now. And it attacks our very fundamentals of life because of this theory. Anything associated with the so-called majority oppressors is no longer any good. That includes our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, which is denigrated as well, and all other great foundations, which to many of us seem to be the ultimate targets. That way, different extremist groups may take further control over the levers of government, both formal and informal. And it teaches the black, red, and yellow students, if we have to use color, that this nation was never meant for them. That is among one of the cruelest canards. It is a lie from the pit of hell, and it is the worst insult to them. And I doubt it is meant to help anybody of any color. Lining students out as if in a gulag, dividing and disturbing them in the cruelest fashion, hardly promotes the type of communities we grew up in. Now we hear some stories that some faculty members may be in fear of their jobs if they don't go along with this. And by the way, what happens to the students that find this quite disturbing as well? How are they going to be treated if they don't want to participate in this? Oh yes, there's quite a bit, folks, quite a bit. Is it the opinion of the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District that Hamden and Wilbraham are filled with heinous and vile citizens, fuming with racial hatred that need to be checked? Do our students need to be reevaluated and indoctrinated in Soviet fashion? Now again, this sweeps all over the country, the Commonwealth, and the region, as does the LGBT agenda, instructing children in a neighboring town in Ludlow how and why they should change their gender. It all comes from the same source. It's despicable. And by the way, that better not be occurring here. More parents and citizens are arriving and they're awakening to this very, very serious issue. I implore the school committee and the administration and the staff to listen to the concerns of the citizens and the parents and heed their warnings. It is the primary duty of our educational system to build good citizens and support our great foundations, not to tear into them and each other. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm always available for questions after.
Thanks, Rick. Richard, before you sit down, just for the record, you just give us your address, please.
I'm
So,
sorry.
That's okay. No, just
Yes.
for the record.
It's up 47 Glen Drive.
Thank you. And anyone that had their statements written, if you'd like to submit those to Kate Belsky, this way they're for the public record as well too, so we have those. I know some of you have them prepared. If you haven't, you can certainly send them to them later. Okay, great. Thanks, Richard. And that is the end of our public comments. So thank you for everybody on that. Next thing on our agenda is the school committee reorganization for the 21-22 school year. This is the one moment that, as a superintendent, we have that little buffer that we run these meetings before that we turn it over to the chair and the chairs and vice chairs and secretaries, and we get to have that little spotlight for a few minutes. And I just want to say two things regarding a couple things. First of all, I just want to go back before we start our new year in the academics and our educational career in the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District to just, again, really applaud the work that was done this past year. We really had a time last couple of weeks to really reflect about the work that was done and where we were last year at this time in preparation for a pandemic and opening up our schools, and people, had a lot of different opinions on the way that we should have done it. But we should be really proud, and I mean all of us, right? From our students to our parents, to our teachers, to our directors, to our administrators, to our school committee. We did some great work to get this thing done. And when I look at my colleagues who I'll be spending the week with next week when we go for our professional learning, and I look at the work that we've done and the way we started school in September 10th, we should be very proud. So that's the first thing. And just a second comment I'd like to make before I turn it over to the reorganization is my goal for this coming year, and the goal that I think we have as a community, is developing our strategic plan. We haven't had one since 2000. That will be the foundation for our school district. Everything else should be focused on that. That's the work we're going to do. So I'm not just hearing, and we appreciate the public comment that people are coming and giving us, but we're going to get information from all of our community members, not just from the people that come to our school committee members, but we're going to get it from our select boards. We're going to get it from our students, from our teachers. Everyone is going to be giving us information, and that strategic plan will be what we root ourselves in for the next 5 years of our education and what we're going to do. Can one of the things that come out of it be an equity audit? Absolutely. But let's wait and see what the work shows us when we do the strategic plan. We're starting it in August already, so a month from now, we're bringing it in, and we're going to be working with Mars to work with our administrators. And then we're already reaching out to the community of both select boards where they're going to have a point person where they help select the people are going to be part of that strategic plan as well too. We want people's input. We want to get all that information together so that we can develop a strategic plan. Everything will focus on that. If there's something that comes on aboard and we say is a part of our strategic plan, we put that on the back burner because we're focusing on what we need to do. It'll be our mission and vision for the next 5 years. Well, certainly things change if there's a pandemic, God forbid, or something else that we might have to readjust, but that will at least give us our focus. The equity audit, which is a conversation that's happening over and over and over again. We're hearing it throughout this entire state of Massachusetts. I've been in education for 34 plus years now as an educator. A year and a half ago, I wouldn't have heard about an equity audit. It wasn't a conversation that was happening. Now it's a conversation that's happening. Let's wait and see what takes place. Let's wait and see what's happening. Every community is struggling right now to get people to come in and help do an equity audit. I'm not really sure exactly the right grouping of people that are going to come in and do that equity audit with us and work with us. The problem also is we got to realize when we do a strategic plan, whether we do an equity audit, That's the hard work. That's the work. The hard work is the work that comes after that. Implementing the strategic plan, implementing the equity audit, if that's what it is. That's where the real work's gonna come in, right? The strategic plan is gonna be the start, but it's a lot more work to do after that as well too. Okay, and that's,
Can I just say
Sure.
something because,
I recognize you, okay, one. That's
thank
all.
you. Thank you.
Just enjoy
I
it
just wanna
for-
say
just
that-
enjoy it for a few minutes.
Having worked on the equity audit for about a year now, I do want to just clarify that we do have on file and through the state JBV in our policy manual for educational equity. And it was voted on. Our equity audit has been voted on in our goals. It has been voted on twice. And it's also been voted on with accepting JBV as part of our policy manual. So I just, it's nothing, I want to say, it's nothing anybody's trying to slip in under the radar, you know? It's something that, yes, it has come to fruition. And in the last few years, I'd say the last 2 years, there's been a lot of conversation. And certainly in, I think it's obvious that we have put our foot on the brake somewhat and slowed down for it. But I think that's good because in looking at what Long Meadow's done and East Long Meadow, they went and did a whole a committee of very diverse people. So they got parents, they got students, they got teachers, they got 24 on their steering committee. And just like the strategic plan goes in and does your question and answers and they do their response from the public and try and get to our mission, goals, and vision. This way of going about an audit uses the community to get to that level. And it's a steering committee for both Long Meadow and East Long Meadow, who are in the throes of it now. Long Meadow is just finishing up the part where they get their results. But like you said, the next part is the really big work. But they still have their steering committee who's committed to working through that process. So I just want to say there's a lot of different ways to go about it. It has been voted on. It's nothing we're trying to put under the radar. It's not going and grabbing kids out of their seat and asking them questions about the race. It's really looking at where are the kids that need more help and how can we do it?
Point of clarification, just a point of clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Al, did you just say that you're gonna do the plan and then you're gonna think about an equity audit afterwards? They're not gonna be hand in hand?
So I think it's really difficult to be able to do a strategic plan and an equity audit all at the same time. When you have focus groups of people that are working on that taking place, that's going to be a lot. When you commit to being a strategic, and by the way, a lot for our district to do as a school committee, as a community, as educators. I think that I've always said, right now, our focus right now is the strategic plan. And if the equity audit is a piece of that comes out of it, and we decide we're going to do that a little later on, I don't think we've ever agreed on a time frame of doing an equity audit. I just know that the strategic plan is the goal that we're going to be working on starting in August.
I think our time frame was the when we set our goals. You know, it was supposed to be done by today, actually, by the new year. And
An equity audit done by today?
yes, we started it back in the summer. But what happened was, as we got closer and closer to naming a company to do it, the state changed their rules and rolled over that you can't even put in for an equity audit until after June 30th. So that set us back. We did have a timeline and we moved along with it. My fear is that if we have a strategic plan where we're developing our mission, our vision, and our goals, and we don't have the equity audit showing where are the things that we need to work on to improve as a full district and make sure everyone's included and that there's, you know, not just equity, there's diversity and there's inclusion, then how do we ever put those together?
Cheryl, where did we vote on it during our goals? I mean, I'm reading our goals, and I don't see anywhere that we voted to say we will conduct an equity audit as part of our goals.
That was, think that was, didn't you give me something where we had to vote on the goals? Or is it JBP?
I think the JVP and T's looking at the goals.
Yeah,
which are in the-
when we first had the goals, it was just to look at equity in the district and diversity and inclusion, and we didn't have a lens through which to do it. And I know I went back to this committee and asked for permission to switch the wording to equity audit so that we would have a tool by which we could look at how we're doing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't remember what date that was.
I don't recall that. The question that I have for you is actually a little bit different. You just described Long Meadow and East Long Meadow taking a collaborative approach within their community to look at equity. Sounds to me like that's an awful lot of what would happen if you were looking at equity as part of a strategic plan. Am I not mistaken? Because you brought up multiple times bringing in an outside vendor to do this. This is the first time I've heard you
Oh, I'm
mention
sorry,
about.
Bill, let me interrupt. This is not without an outside vendor. This is a steering committee of, like I said, parents, students, teachers that work under the auspices of an outside vendor. For both East Long Meadow and Long Meadow, they chose CLE. We were looking at Mass Insight, and there were two other people we interviewed.
Okay.
But I didn't want to give the impression it was just being targeted by the steering committee. But certainly that steering committee is extraordinarily helpful when you get past the audit itself and you want to look at, now what do you do with the information?
Are either of those districts conducting a strategic plan?
I think Gordon's district that did one like 2 years ago. They updated their strategic plan.
And so as part
I'm
of their,
pretty sure Long Meadow has updated their strategic plan.
so
too.
as far as their strategic plan, so they have an up-to-date strategic plan, and that was
I
part
believe
of,
so.
part of what they did. So I think the question that we're asking is, you know, and I would agree with Al on this. You know, people look at a strategic plan and an equity audit as being two separate and distinct entities. I don't see that. I see the strategic plan as being the overarching goal of the district. And I'm sure there's going to be a discussion of, you know, equity, diversion, and equity, diversity, and inclusion in that discussion. But to put two generals on a battlefield at the same time, I think it's very ill-advised. I really do.
But I
Because
thought the people from,
Yeah, but
they said they welcomed it. And they've
yeah,
done it
they
in the
actually
past
had it on their
and worked
slides.
together.
I said that.
Yeah, he did say that. He said that they look forward, they've done it many times and they like it separate and they work together with the people.
And they've
But it's
done
done
it
as,
better.
but it's done under the auspices of the strategic plan.
Yeah, and
So it's-
that was on the slides too. Yeah,
Exactly.
good job.
The big umbrella we really, and I know we keep using that, is we need to do a strategic plan. If, once we're doing that information and gathering information from our community, if one, and by the way, we're saying equity audit. I think if we asked everyone in this room what they thought the definition of an equity audit is, I think we'd all maybe a little different as well too. And I think that's the purpose of doing a strategic plan, to say, what exactly are we looking at in terms of equity? Are we looking, we heard a couple of our speakers, someone's talking about, you know, talking about our students, we're talking about hiring teachers of color. Others are looking at advanced placement. There's so many different ways of looking at equity in our district. And I think that's going to all come out when we're doing our strategic plan. I really do. But I think one of the things we need to realize is people that are going to be involved in whether it be an equity audit or a strategic plan, there's an investment of your time. So you're not going to just show up to one meeting and say, I'm part of the strategic plan and here's my data and I'm helping you out and bye, see you later. You're going to have to make a commitment all year long to working with this group to get information. So to have that many people, I hope we do have that many people that want to be part of our strategic plans. And if out of that strategic plan, they say, we definitely need an equity audit. We're hearing from all of our community members, there's an issue right here, or maybe there's really not a big issue here, or whatever. But I think that we really got to focus on our strategic plan. And I think you'll see, because it's part of our conversations here, that there'll be some sort of equity issues that will come out of that. There really will.
Is the equity audit something that has to come from the school committee? Because I know we voted on the 5-year plan. You know, I know, I don't know if we had to vote on it, but I know we did vote on it, right?
Yes, we did.
Right. So I didn't know if that was, I think that's something that the superintendent says he's going to do the plan and we have to allocate the money for that, correct?
We didn't have to vote on the 5-year plan. So
Right.
if I recall correctly, this is 3 years ago. What Al had asked for is that I would like to have your support. So while there was not a vote needed, that was why the vote was
Right.
there.
And then an equity audit would come from the superintendent again, correct?
As informed by the strategic plan. And our job as a school committee is to basically provide policy support funding. Right, so remember the three basic tenets of what the school committee is
Yeah,
responsible.
and so you've changed your mind that you want the equity audit to come after the 5-year plan, not in together with it.
So not 5-year plan, because that was that reorganization piece, the strategic plan, Sean, right? So I think,
Strategic plan.
right, when we start that work in the strategic plan, if we find out, they might come out of that strategic plan saying, your number one priority is an equity audit. You need to move on that because that's our priority. It might say we're looking at something different. We might need to be looking at community. We might need to be looking at culture. We might need to be looking at building relationships. There's a plethora of things that the strategic plan might come up with and give us results that will make us move forward in that direction. Right now, we're putting out a lot of fires. We just need a blueprint of what the work that we want to do from our community, not just the people that come every week to our school committee, and not just from our school committee administrators, but from the entire community of what they think is the route and the path that we should be going as a district. And
Okay,
if it
so
all
again,
comes
I'm
out,
just trying to, so the people who are doing the strategic plan said that they welcomed us having an equity audit at the same time. I always thought that was what we were gonna do, but now that's not what we're not.
No, I
that's not
think
what we're gonna do.
Mac's presentation, it was a bullet point underneath the strategic plan. I think what he was talking about was the different areas in which you may explore in a strategic plan, of which an equity audit was one of.
Yeah,
those.
and he did say we've worked with many other districts.
And if
third-party
that comes
equity
But it
up-
was a separate entity that worked directly with them,
Right,
but it wasn't something, because if you recall, they said that they weren't comfortable doing it themselves,
right.
but that they would work with an organization. And then I know that that's when we, prior to starting to talk about that, is when we found out that the state was changing.
Yeah.
Because if you look across the Commonwealth, you'll see that there's been a lot of different school communities that have started to look into having diversity inclusion roles within their school districts. And it's how they got to that, what determined that some just hired one, some used an outside agency to determine what they needed to do and how they were gonna address that. Every district has done it very differently.
Yeah, but they did, I thought that's what they said, that they don't do these audits.
they do not. Marge made it
Not
very
So,
clear.
so
specific.
for them
They're
to
not-
say, you know, you need an equity audit, he says they don't even touch it. That's what the impression.
No, I
was.
think that he agreed that if you were gonna do one, that they could incorporate it with it, because you're
Yeah,
gonna
be
be
a part
polling
of
the
the
same
plan.
people. Why start to
Right.
do it one way and then have to either go back or try to have another group of people?
He said it'd be part of the strategic
Mhm.
plan.
Right, and my sense from what he said was that he welcomed it because it gave more information as to what was.
Yeah, that's all,
going on.
an audit, like Cheryl
That's
just
what
said.
an audit does. It
It's
gives
information.
information on how you're doing.
I agree. But what are we auditing right now? Because we've heard from many different community members what they think equity in which we're not doing right. So I think that's
Well, it's
part of
up
the
to you to tell
strategic,
us,
I think
Al,
that's part of the strategic plan, getting information from the community saying, we need to look at equity and diversity. We need to look at equity in our community. I think we just need to keep our focus on one thing. And again, if school committee, I think Karen said it really well at a couple of school committee, if this is what the school committee wants us to do, we'll move forward with an equity audit. My goal, right, for next year is developing a strategic plan so that we have something in hand that will lead us for the next 5 years. And I certainly believe from the conversation that we're having here, an equity audit would be certainly something that will be part of it, or equity and diversity is certainly part of our strategic plan.
But if we don't do the equity audit until the strategic plan's done,
You lost the window.
yeah, I was gonna say, so it's not a part of the equity audit then. I mean, it's not a part of the strategic plan.
And
I'm
again,
just trying to get like,
Yep.
let's all get on the same page.
Yep.
Like, you know, it seems like the story's changing. We have a lot of people that think very strongly on both sides. So what is it that we're looking at? What is it? We're gonna do an equity if we need one, but we're gonna go to a group that says that they don't touch it, they don't have anything to do with it. Are we gonna do it in tandem? Or now is what you're saying is that we're not gonna do it at all, only if the strategic plan tells us that we need one?
So,
Well, let me just, I'll try to answer that as best as I can.
Well,
I
actually,
hear
I was
what-
the one who should answer it because
Yeah.
he's the
So,
one. who's-
again, my focus is doing a strategic plan. I think when we're doing that, gathering of that information for the strategic plan, we're gonna find out that again, is certainly a topic. We're gonna find that we're gonna need to do an equity audit because that's certainly the conversation. If school committee says to me right now, we want to do an equity audit as well too at the same exact time, I will welcome that. you also got to know, Cheryl, from the conversations that you've had and we've had, there's so many communities out there that are doing equity audits right now. To be able to find a group of people that we want to bring in and work with us is going to be a concern for us as well too. I like to also
We
see,
know that's a fact or that's a concern.
we know that are out there looking to have equity audits done and being able to have the right grouping come into us, and that's a good fit for our community as well too. The other part is, I actually want to see what happens at Long Meadow and East Long Meadow. I want to see what their equity audit results are. I want to see what's happening out there. What's that?
Long Meadows is up on their website.
Okay, great. I'd like to see like
It's there,
what it yields. Absolutely. I'd like to see what the end results are of that as well.
and it took 2 years. It's not a.
That's right.
It's not it's not a flash in the pan.
Agree.
And the strategic plan is going to take 6 months
That's right.
to 8 months. I am frustrated by this beyond belief, and I'm frustrated by the notion, again, that we never had a vote. So I'd like to make a motion, and we'll have our vote now. And at least, because we've got, the town is voting by their own public comments as what they want or what they don't want. I think I'd like to go on record and say, you know, do we want to move forward with the strategic plan with an embedded equity audit in it? And certainly, we may not be able to do it exactly at the same time because there might not be a vendor there, because everybody in the Commonwealth is doing it.
And that's sort of what I'm just saying, right? So we need to
Yeah.
be, it's not gonna happen overnight. We gotta vet groups that are gonna be the right fit for us. You know, if we were smart 3 years ago, we all would have opened up an equity audit company and said, okay, we're gonna come to communities and start doing some equity audits as well too. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? So again, 30+ years as an educator, a year and a half ago, if I was to come to you and say, we need to do an equity audit, right? You would all be looking at me like, what exactly does that mean now? So I appreciate what you're saying, and it's not gonna be something that happens overnight. But you as a
Can
school,
I make a quick, so Tracy, she said $150,000 was the cost. I don't remember it being that high. What was the amount of money that you're looking at for an equity
Mass
audit?
Insight was one of the ones that quoted us 63,000. And I think the gentleman from previously from Boston Schools, I think he was a little higher than that.
it was like, they were
John
like
was his
80,
name?
85,000,
Yeah.
something along that.
And then
frame.
Tom had talked to one who was in the 50s. So.
Yeah, so from 50 to 85,000. So it's not as high as 150,000. It's still a substantial amount
And
of
there
money.
probably could be, I think to some degree, if people then go on to hire someone in a role, it could be, salary wise, it could be that high.
Sure.
So I think it depends on who you use
that
it. I
what you
think
were
that's why the
using?
state,
I'm sorry.
Where did you get the 150,000 from?
Somebody shared that information.
Oh, okay. So you're not specific. It's not like a salary of a teacher. It's,
No.
oh, okay.
What Mara's referring to is a lot of communities hire a diversity officer,
Right.
right? So that's what she's referring to.
There were 30 hired over the past 2 years in Massachusetts. We were at the big.
So are people comfortable taking a vote as to whether or not we could continue to pursue an equity audit embedded in with our strategic plan?
You should probably.
I think you should do the chair, yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we should probably have it. My time as chair is coming.
We need to
I'm ready to
find
move that gavel on. Let
We
me
need
tell
to
you.
find a chair.
Yeah,
before I make a
absolutely. I'm ready to
motion.
move
Okay.
that on.
Let's quickly get that
But-
gavel to,
Yeah,
he's like happy to
Different
push
hands.
it.
yeah, absolutely. I else I'd even sit in that chair. So again, if that's what the school committee gives us the direction to go, certainly that's what we'll do. But I just need you to know our goal right now as a district, and when I'm meeting with my principals for our goals that we're going to be working on, we'll be developing this and working on a strategic plan for the 21-22 school year. Okay. Great. So we're now to the point of, Kate, if you could just put that up for me, school committee reorganization for the 21-22 school year. For the purposes of organizing the school committee at its first regular meeting in the new fiscal year, we elect from its membership a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk, all of whom will hold the representative offices for a term of 1 year or until a successor is elected. In the event the chair and the vice chair are no longer members of the school committee, the senior member, years served, will act as the chair pro temp. A majority of the members of the school committee will constitute a quorum. The election will proceed as follows. Nomination for the office of chair will be made from the floor. The chair will be elected by a majority roll call vote of the members presenting and voting. If no nominee receives a majority vote, the election will be declared null and void and nominations will be reopened. Upon election, the new chair will preside, calling for the election of a vice chair and a clerk in order. The procedure used for this election will be the same as that for electing the chair. Any vacancy among the officers occurring between organizational meetings will be filled by a member elected by the school committee. The election will be conducted as described above. Following the election of officers at its organizational meeting, the school committee may proceed into regular or special business as scheduled on the agenda. This is legal reference MGL 71.16A, 16A. Kate, if you could just put up the next thing. Thank you. The next thing is just the school committee officers and the duties of the chair. And it just lists them right there. And I think she has those up there. The chair of the school committee has the same power as any other member of the committee to vote upon all measures coming before it, to offer resolutions and to discuss questions. He or she will perform the duties that are consistent with his or her office and those required by law, state regulations in this committee. And carrying out these responsibilities, the chair will, and it goes on, sign the instrument acts, consult with the superintendent in planning for committee agendas, confer with the superintendent on crucial matters that may occur between committee meetings, and it goes on all the way down. And then we go on to the duties of the vice chair, duties of the secretary, and duties of the treasurer. Any questions or comments before I move forward? And all that's right up there and in your packets as well. Okay. At this point, do I have any nominations for the office of the chair of the school committee for the Wilbraham Regional School District for the 21-22 school year?
I am proud to nominate Michelle Boudreau as the first woman of color to chair the HWRSD school committee.
Thank you, Sean. Do I have any other nominations?
I nominate Maura Ryan.
Do I have any other nominations? Michelle Boudreau, do you accept the nomination? Michelle Boudreau accepts the nomination. Maura Ryan, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
Great, thank you. At this point, we'd like you each to make an opening statement if you'd like, if you don't have to. We'll go in alphabetical order. Michelle Amar, I'll leave it at that way. Michelle Amar, would you like to make a statement?
I've served on the school committee for, last year was my second year. I filled the final term of Mary Ellen Glover prior to her departure from the school committee, and I would be honored to lead the group. I've really enjoyed working with you folks, not only just at the committee level, but the subcommittee level. I've learned a lot over the last 2 years about the process and how you can make progress grow through the school committee. I look forward to possibly taking the role. I don't really know what to say.
Thank you, Maura. Michelle.
Thank you for the nomination. I'm, newer to this school committee. I believe that I'd be very proud to, navigate through these waters as we move forward over the next year with the school committee and the communities.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Michelle. Discussions. Ladies and gentlemen,
I think we have two great candidates.
thank you.
So I have to bring it up, Maura. At the last meeting, we had discussed the information that was shared with you in July regarding the superintendent's purported ethics violation. And at that meeting, Mr. Kennedy was asking you some questions about that. And you refused to answer those questions. You referenced him to the meeting that we had in subcommittee where that information was shared with the committee, and that was a public meeting with regards to being given that information in July. The question that I have is, how do you feel knowing that you knew that information ahead of time, and the one person that you could have shared it with and you could have mitigated much, if not all, of the ramifications of this was the superintendent, and yet failed to do so. One of the principal jobs of a school committee chair is to work very closely with the superintendent and to share information. As a matter of fact, if you look at just duties of the chair, number 3, confer with the superintendent on crucial matters that may occur between committee meetings. So I ask you, can you provide us with an explanation as to why, when you were given that information, the first person that you didn't share it with was the superintendent?
I can say last year in my role as vice chair that I had many of opportunities to share confidential and other information with Al, that I have done so. I have forwarded him that information. At the time of which I was made aware from a constituent in the town of Hamden, I was new to the committee. I wasn't really sure if it was something that I was to say. I didn't know enough. I will say since that point, I have educated myself on our policies, not only just the school committee policies, but the employee handbook policies, as well as the student handbook policies for the students and families. I had a discussion with Al about it prior. I honestly, as I said in the last meeting, I didn't know, even in the meeting when you aggressively came to me during our review of Al's, I forget what that,
Superintendent's review.
his review. You kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I acknowledged making a mistake that I didn't know. I have since fully re-educated myself. I have talked to other members of the MASC about how that could have been handled better. I didn't know in July, and to Al's point, during one of the school committee meetings where he said that we all sign the warrants and we are all responsible for making sure that we are knowing when we're signing the warrants. At any point in time when those warrants are going around, someone should have noticed it. So I'm not saying I'm owning what I knew and didn't know to bring to Al, because I didn't know. And at the time we didn't have a chair, so I had talked to the person who I thought I could have that discussion with.
I guess the issue that I struggle with is the collaboration between any school committee member and superintendent. And we should all be working on the same team. And regardless of issues of chain of command, it's just common decency. I hear something that is potentially injurious to a member of this committee or to the superintendent. I feel it's my obligation to tell them that this is out there. So I struggle with that because it was a very simple fix. I'm certain that you've contacted Al about a myriad of other issues over the past year, over the past year and a half. If it was important enough that you thought you needed to share it with Patrick, I don't understand why you didn't think it was important enough to share it with the superintendent. I just don't
Yep.
know.
Yep.
No.
If I may on this, so I've never missed a school committee meeting or a subcommittee meeting of which I was a member of. I do not have the luxury of time to attend every single meeting that every other, subcommittee meeting and stuff that happens, which is why we rely, or at least why I rely on when we come together, where the different chairs of the different subcommittees will say, this is what we talked about, and this is what was reviewed. So at that last school committee meeting, I believe it was Dr. Bontempi said something about this. And when I asked you about it, you said, well, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And you were really adamant about it. And I was like, what do you mean don't talk about it anymore? We've never talked about it. And then you said, it was at the last meeting that we talked about it. And I was like, I wasn't at the last meeting. And you said, well, it was a public meeting and you can go back and watch the video and stuff. And I was like, because I didn't know it was actually recorded, because we don't record all of our subcommittee meetings. I don't know why, but we don't, or didn't. So, but as a chair, I would hope if you were to get this position, or even you, Michelle, that you guys would be open to the fact that, we try our best. Like I said, I've been every meeting that I have been a part of as either a committee member or as as a subcommittee member, I have attended, you know. And I would hope that if someone asks for information or something like that, that you both would be open to that. And something you just said, that you said something about Bill being aggressive and push. I don't think I was aggressive. I don't think I was pushing. I was just asking a question, but
I didn't.
I felt, yeah, I felt your response back was pretty aggressive. So, you know, we can all be better at being aggressive. We can all be better at pushing. We can all be better, you know, when one of us makes a mistake, all of us makes a mistake, because we are one unit. We are not 7 school committee members. We're one school committee. Okay. So I would just hope that, you know, moving forward, we would I mean, I still think it's a conversation we should have someday. So you found out about it, you told Patrick, who was the chair, but I thought Patrick said you didn't hear about it until December 3rd or something. I'm all confused.
I don't recall the conversation. In complete transparency, I had a whole vote going on last July.
Yeah.
And so if Maura says she had a conversation, she had a conversation. I don't recall, but that's,
All right.
I have complete reason to believe that she had the conversation, and I overlooked it when I found out about the other scenario. That was when I brought it to Cheryl. Based off the terms and conditions of Al's contract, that's the appropriate legal course, and because it was a legal question, I chose to go right to the letter of the law as far as those contracts. But again, I have every reason to believe I don't recall it. But if Maura says she had a conversation with me.
So and then just in support of Michelle, the conversations and interactions that I've had with her in the last year, I found her to be incredibly bright, asking a lot of good questions. Quiet, but when she speaks, what she says matters, which is kind of like EF Hutton. Right?
Does anybody know what EF Hutton?
And I'm thinking that this would give her an opportunity to find her voice among the committee, and so I would endorse her candidacy.
I've had conversations with both Maura Ryan and Michelle. Maura presents herself very clearly in a school committee meeting. Michelle, I have to say, some of the conversations I've had with you have been amazing. And she knows what's going on, and I would really like to see that as a leadership. You know, I think that you have what it takes, and I think it'll be very interesting. But Maura also is excellent.
Any more discussions? Let's bring it to a vote. And so what Kate is saying to me is the alphabetical order. So that's, I feel, is the fairest way to do this. So I will start off with Dr. Bontempi. Michelle Boudreau. Cheryl Caruana. Sean Kennedy.
Michelle.
Patrick Kieran.
Maura.
Lisa Murray.
I'm gonna go with more.
Maura Ryan.
I'm gonna go with Michelle. I appreciate, it's okay if I say something, I appreciate the faith that you folks have in me. But I can see the value of having Michelle lead back. If it's okay, calling us back.
We're all back.
We'll uncover that in our equity audit, whether that's a appropriate way to use it or not. I gotta get out of this chair role right now. Okay, so with that being said, Kate Belsky, I have 4 votes for Michelle Boudreau and 3 votes for Maura Ryan, if I'm correct. And so our new chair for the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District for the 21-22 school year will be Michelle Boudreau. Congratulations, Michelle. That's okay. I'm ready. Okay. For a second.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So the next thing that you want to do is to do the same thing I just did for chair, but for vice chair. Okay, so you're going to ask
For nomination.
for nominations for. Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
John Kennedy.
I nominate Laura. He was great, but vice chair for me.
I got one nomination for Sean Kennedy. I got one nomination for Maura Ryan. Lisa Mara, you look stressed out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out.
Trial by
Like, oh,
fire.
no.
Do I have any more nominations?
Laura, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Laura, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
And would either of you like to give a statement?
If you're the one. In my last one count.
So I was vice chair a couple times before, I think, under Patrick and under Bill. I was also treasurer under Cheryl and one of Patrick's terms, I think, as well. Yeah, I can help. I will be, if Michelle can't do it, I'd be more than happy to step up and run the meetings. I think I know the meetings. I think I understand what our goals is and what our leans are in the school committee. And I think I could do a good job, but Maura Ryan is also excellent.
Insert vice chair from chair statement of failure.
I was the chair last year. I feel like I was very helpful in my role, not only just to the chair, but also to the superintendent and some of the administrative folks. I welcome the opportunity to serve again as the vice chair the second time.
Right.
And I equally think that Sean would be a good candidate.
And I know that Laura was a great vice chair. She helped me be a better chair. The other thing that I think is nice that hasn't happened in this committee for a long time. It's been the chair and the vice chair both from home. I think that sends a message.
Any other comment? Sorry, sorry.
First, you don't want to.
Make up your mind, yeah.
Just kidding.
Any other comments by anybody? Okay, so we will do a roll call vote in alphabetical order. Okay. Bill?
Sean.
Cheryl?
Well,
Sean?
Myself.
Patrick?
More.
Lisa? More. And myself? Oh, more, sorry, more.
Mara.
Okay. And myself, more. With 5 votes for Maura Ryan and 2 for Sean Kennedy. Okay, do I have any nominations for secretary?
Did we have one of those last year?
Yeah.
Is that what you were? I wasn't sure if it was, because you just mentioned treasurer, so I was
Oh,
like. wait a minute.
secretary, treasurer.
I
I
nominate
meant
Sean
secretary.
Kennedy.
I second that nomination.
Do you accept it? Do you have any?
I accept.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations though?
Any discussions?
So I
Do you
give
have
a
another
statement.
statement?
4 years ago. No, if I can get the name of the title right, yes, secretary. Yeah, it's, bank accounts and stuff like that. It's an honor to help in any way.
Okay, so we will do an alphabetical, vote in alphabetical order. Bill?
Sean.
Sean? Sean?
Sean.
Patrick?
Sean.
Lisa?
Sean.
Maura?
Sean,
Myself? Sean?
unanimous.
So
Unanimous.
congratulations. Oh, that's it.
Oh, so okay. So subcommittees of the school committee. The school committee shall appoint members to subcommittees at their annual organizational meeting for a period of 1 year. These subcommittees may be created for a specific purpose and to make recommendations for the committee action. 1, the subcommittee will be established through action of the committee. 2, the committee chairperson, subject to approval by the committee, will appoint the subcommittee chairperson and its members. 3, the subcommittee will be provided with a list of its functions and duties. 4, the subcommittee may make recommendations for committee action, but it may not act for the school committee. 5, all subcommittees of the school committee are subject to the provisions of the open meeting law.
I would just read the topics, yeah.
Okay, so let me just vote.
Yep.
Okay. So for the first one is finance and operations. Do I have any nominations for chair?
Bill Von Temp, you wouldn't do the chair.
No, you wouldn't
Just
do-
the-
Oh,
So
just the
basically,
subcommittee,
who was
okay.
on the committee before? I was on the committee, Bill was on the
You,
committee, and Laura was on it. I'd like to stay on the committee. I've been on it for 5 years.
So the only question I just want to ask is if either Michelle or Lisa have any interest in participating? Because I always felt that it was important for the finance side of things that, am I okay to talk, I'm sorry, that someone from Hamden also be represented, so I didn't want to assume in case it's something that you want to do. Okay, I'd like to keep it the same then.
Bill, you still want to stay on, right?
Yeah.
So so just the 3 of us, we want to stay on? Is everyone good with that?
Can I just point a quick, we don't have to vote on this, right?
No.
We just sort of work it out amongst
Yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So finance operation,
But we usually do an alternate.
Eligible to go to any.
that's correct. So
However, they're
yeah.
not allowed to participate.
Right.
Well, any committee member is allowed to go to any meeting from the open meeting law. However, if any committee member does show up to the meeting, they're not allowed to participate in the meeting because then it would be considered a form of the full meeting. The only way that you could do that is if the subcommittee meeting was also posted as a meeting of the full committee.
Can't they state at the beginning of the meeting that they're there as a community member and not on their official capacity?
No, that has been said before, and I never understood the difference that I can say, I'm speaking on behalf of the community, I can speak in public comment.
No, I think it was they had the ability to participate in being in the seat, but they could not speak.
Yeah, only public comment.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So if they speak in public comment, they can say, I'm speaking on behalf as a community member. But then I always felt that there was a really weird line there, you know,
And
because
we've-
we're never not school committee members.
And we've had situations in the past where members of the committee were in attendance and were consulted for factual information. Again,
Right.
the differentiation comes in
Deliberation.
is deliberation, right? So if you're making a decision about something, or if you're delivering an idea, then you are subject to the provisions of the open meeting law.
And how we did this last year and years previous is usually the chair of the subcommittee would just give a quick overview of what the committee is and stuff moving on. So, but finance and operations.
That's
Pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
But you did a good job last year.
Yeah.
We negotiate.
So finance and operations is going to be,
Myself, Maura,
Tempe
and Sean.
Kennedy, Ryan.
And then you want an alternate.
oh, perfect.
Yeah, and then the alternate, in case one of us is not able to show up or be on remotely, who would we have? Who was the role? Who was the alternate before?
That was,
Would you like to remain being the alternate?
it's fine. I don't-
Okay.
And I'll rate you that.
So it's curriculum and news people that want it, or Michelle Version, Cheryl Carol Warnick, and Maura Ryan.
And Michelle Boudreau.
And Michelle
I was the
Boudreau.
alternate,
Sorry, oh, sorry.
just so you know, that's all.
Mhm.
So we're keeping that the same.
Well, Michelle Mershon, there was this, yeah, she was on it too.
I would like to be on curriculum.
Oh, great.
I would like to remain the alternate. So if for some reason you can't go, you email me. Okay. Then I'll go into place.
Curriculum. Do you want to name her?
So who's on curriculum?
Cheryl, Michelle, and Lisa. and Mara is the alternate.
Awesome.
Negotiations. So last year it was,
Patrick was the chair.
So I would say for you, this is one where you need to decide whether you want to be on it or not. It may make, here, I would say it makes a whole lot of sense for you to be on it.
okay,
As the chair of the overall committee. So my recommendation would be that you are on that.
And if I could speak to the chair, I couldn't agree more with Patrick. And so I would ask that, this is negotiation, you have all 5 contracts, right? So we're gonna be doing teachers, paras, custodians, nurses, and administrative assistants. So there's gonna be a lot involved with that. So you might want to reconsider the curriculum because you're gonna be in the finance, with negotiations, there's a lot of meetings lined up. Just something to think about.
But if you can't make it.
You could be on both.
Yeah, you can be able to. So I think it's important, like Patrick said, that you should be on negotiations.
so it was Bill, Sean, Maura, and Patrick. So who else would like to be on?
This is negotiation. This is gonna be a big year. This is our year of negotiation.
I'm in. Patrick, you still in? Yeah. And so are you in?
Mhm.
So that's all we need, right?
Okay.
And then an alternate?
I'm happy to be the alternate.
Okay.
So I'm just getting this right for negotiations. Michelle Bedrow, Sean Kennedy, Patrick Kiernan, alternate will be Mara Ryan.
Onto policy.
Yeah, Michelle Immersion ran this thing.
I'd like to remain on policy.
Lisa, would you like to jump into that one, being a professional educator?
It's not that bad. We're only gonna be like an hour long meeting. These are gonna be really good, concise meetings.
Look at her selling it.
As opposed to last
No,
year. is that
No,
what
they
she-
were very good. They were very
Not like
good.
you're gonna have
Michelle was-
control over
She's
the
like-
curriculum of the community.
Michelle
It's like the
would
meeting's not
tell
gonna be
you
long.
that they were very well run meetings. And we're gonna miss Kate really bad. And Michelle. Yes.
So we got Mara Ryan, Lisa Murray.
You don't have to.
We
That's
were
fine.
volunteer, she was volunteered for it.
Can we have an
Is that
alternate?
okay?
Either one of
I'll be an alternate.
the gentlemen?
Patrick will be an alternate as well.
Did someone else say they'd be an alternate
I
besides
was gonna say,
Patrick?
can you rock,
Sean
paper,
and
scissors?
Patrick.
Okay,
Can you rock, paper, scissors that?
so for policy, so policy, Mara Ryan, Lisa Murray, Cheryl Caruana. Alternate is either Patrick or Sean.
Sean, can be that.
I think you should be the alternate,
Quite right, Sean's got-
just because he automatically.
Did he
said
win
it.
rock, paper, scissors? Is that how that?
Actually, he
was?
No,
wanted
he had
scissors, I
scissors.
had paper.
Sean.
Okay.
Audit.
Last year, the audit was Cheryl Caruana.
Wait,
No,
who
it was
did
you.
did we do an audit?
It's not, it's not done yet. but
Oh, was it? Oh,
It
sorry.
hasn't been done yet, right?
it's not
Yeah, we're
done.
still.
We're still chipping
Because
away
of
at it.
COVID, it's.
I'll be happy to report out for audit.
What, the audit had COVID?
Yeah, no, we had to do everything remotely, so we're literally still sending them files. It's.
Okay.
He just gets punched up. It's like, that's
Usually it's done by this time.
Usually,
Roughly.
it should, yeah, I mean, it
It should be done before the end of the year.
We're already, yeah, we're scheduling the start of the next one for October. I mean, so any findings we have, we've got like 2 months to act on, so that's like. We're, yeah, it's gonna be a fun time.
So Cheryl will stay on that? Is that cool?
Curriculum.
Yeah, no, audit.
No, Bill, Bill just said he'd do
Oh,
it.
Bill? Oh, cool. All right, cool.
So the Lower Pioneer Valley Collaborative. So that was Michelle. Last year.
Yeah, there's two. There's the collaborative and there's the corporation. So all the assets of the collaborative are owned by the corporation. So when they're talking about, lease signing, or we're gonna sell a building, or we're gonna buy a building, or something like that, or we're gonna buy a piece of machinery or sell a piece of machinery, stuff like that, that happens in the corporation, okay? I was the president of the corporation for 4 years. I stepped down last year, and who took over?
Michelle and I was the alternate.
Yeah, you took it, right? Yeah, all right. So, and then the collaborative part talks importantly, and Michelle did a great job with this, about, issues that we had with, our refunds, if they were refunds, issues about curriculum, issues about, different areas for the collaborative to go in. We brought forth to them, remember, we had the idea about buying a bunch of computers together or buying some things together as a collaborative to get better rates and such.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, Sean, so at the collaborative, you're the voice of the table for Camden Wilbraham.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the community of the collaborative, you talk about Ludlow, East Long Meadow, Agawam, you're the other representative from the Camden Wilbraham. In all honesty, those are monthly meetings as
It's
opposed to,
Weekly, bi-weekly, or
that's right.
It
So
was like a
when you're a part of that Lower Pioneer Valley Collaborative, they have monthly meetings where they all get together.
Right.
And that's the ones that Michelle and Version did.
And the ones that Michelle and I were part of, the corporation is quarterly.
they're after, I remember they were after dinner. I
Yeah,
remember what
yeah,
Michelle had
they were
mentioned.
always in the evening.
That's interesting.
Can we volunteer you for the collaborative?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And
Gives
then-
you it'll give you a very global perspective of what a regional school district is as opposed to a municipality and how the collaborative runs their day-to-day operations.
You're gonna learn
It's
a
a lot
lot.
more than just buses.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
buses, educational programs, continuing education. There's a whole list of things that they do.
I have friends that are on school committees and they're all municipal, and it's like a different world.
And there's work that needs to be done with the collaborative,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
When we talk about our tech programs that we're offering, and there's some work that needs to be done. So it'll be, it'd be good to have a voice there at the table, and you're bringing a perspective as an educator as well too. So I think that's a win-win for us as well.
Do you want to have Michelle,
Oh, it
Cheryl, do you want to
happened,
be the alternate?
it happens, by the way, it doesn't happen here, it happens at, what, is it Bushy Ave in?
Brush Hill Ave.
Brushfield. yeah,
Brush Hill Ave.
Something like that. Listen, it's after 8 o'clock. All right. Uh,
So then,
And it's usually like the corporation meetings are, done in an hour, but collaboratives, I think, go for an hour or so. So it's at Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative.
And we'll send you the invite. You'll get all that stuff. So Roland already asked me today, like, give him the name, so he'll reach out to you.
and they don't put it all in military.
And is the alternate Cheryl?
Have a cap, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, set up here. Each of you are-
And Michelle, you're gonna stay on the corporation?
Patrick, want to be the alternate again?
Sure.
Thank you.
Taxing job last year.
For the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, Mars.
Oh, I was on that last year and there wasn't much to do because of COVID, but yeah, I'd like to stay on it.
I'll be the alternate just in case.
Yeah, were you the alternate last year?
No, it says there was no alternate noted.
So just for clarity, Cheryl, the meetings happen usually during the day. They're like at Westford. So just appreciate they're like from 9 till like noon time, usually once a month. Again, we didn't do them last year because of COVID.
Usually once a month.
Great, alternate, all right.
I'm good to stay out of it.
The Scanty Valley Regional Health Trust.
So this one was a different one, right? So the year before I did it, when Rita left. And then Howie went to the meetings, and I think last year Aaron went.
Yep.
And I didn't know when the meetings were.
So typically at those meetings, I don't think we have, are there any school committee members that even attend those
Those,
meetings?
not really. I mean, school committee and select board don't usually get involved. It's usually
I was
administrators.
surprised that I was the only one there.
Yeah, it's
And
not,
then
it's
It's a
typically,
couple school districts and some towns
Mhm.
that, collectively share, health
Healthcare expenses,
insurance.
right.
Any of the
So-
programs that they're gonna offer, I remember
Yeah.
there's a lot of.
So I'm the voting member and we recently voted Christine as the alternate member.
So I'm even better to just say, let,
Right,
if it's
so
okay to
you-
leave it to them.
Right,
let
you're
them do it.
welcome to, you're welcome to sit and listen. It's, it's, yeah.
The meeting I went to, someone from East Long Meadow fell asleep.
Yeah, that's.
Thanks for calling them out.
It was a couple years ago. So
Okay.
So it's
I
not
mean,
required
it is what
that-
it is. What it is. I mean,
So you're saying if we need good sleep?
and those are in the middle of the day as well. So usually 9 or 11.
We're not doing school pay right now.
No, that's-
yeah.
is the MASS, MASC delegate.
So every year at the convention, which we're having, which they're gonna have for the first time, in a couple of years, I think, right, this year. And there are some things to vote on, and usually we bring them up here. You give me guidance on where the committee goes. And as you can see this year, it's November 3rd through the 6th, which I believe it's like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
And we go, we stay in a hotel. I gotta tell you, and Bill can attest, who else has been? Michelle has been, right? Yeah. Huh? Kate Belsky has been, so you know if Kate Belsky goes. It's a really good information, because not only do you get to talk to other school committee members and you can see what their issues are, you know, and get a different perspective that way. You also get to meet a lot of the other superintendents, you know, and see how they're doing things, you know. I have some people who I talk to on a monthly basis that I met there. And it's funny, one of them years later actually works at the company I work for. So we see each other all the time. We talk to school committee stuff. But so I recommend going to this conference, but I've done the delegate for a couple of years now. So 4 years. So I've done it for 4 years. So I'll do it for a fifth unless someone else would like to do it.
Hardest part about the delegate is the House of Delegates meets on Saturday afternoon. So you get the whole program and then it wraps up and then it's basically yeah. I don't know why they don't do it at the beginning of the program. That would seem to make a lot more sense.
Maybe to entice people to stay.
What's that?
Maybe to entice people to stay.
I don't know. It would almost work in the reverse. It's almost like they want to try to get as few people there as possible, because, you know, if you have it at the beginning, I know that for our
I've stayed every year.
for
to
our
the
professional
end.
societies, we have them on Tuesday,
Yeah.
and the meeting starts on Wednesday. So it would seem like if they wanted to draw a big crowd, they would have it on Wednesday, you know, and get the early birds showing up, and then they go to the program on Thursday.
Unless there are people that are just going for that one part, they're going for Saturday.
Well,
Yeah,
Saturday, everyone, in theory, most people have off, so that would be the day off. if you wanna do that.
but I would echo Sean's comments that it is, if you can get the time to go, it's a couple days out of work, but the ability to network,
Highly recommend it.
you get to meet school committee members from this area.
Right. They haven't had it when Maura's been on, has it? Or did
You
you?
know, had it.
No, the year that I came, that's when it was shortly after that it got canceled.
Right,
And then they didn't have it last year.
right.
But the idea that you can talk to other school committee members, you can talk to superintendents, the programs that they offer are really valuable. As a matter of fact, I still have
Oh, yeah.
copies of handouts from several of those programs. that I
Like
keep
if
with
you
me.
go in here, some of it, does it have it in here, some of the things that they're doing? You
Yeah, no,
know,
it's in the program.
different sessions
It's
that they
online.
have, you know, equity audits, look, there's one right there that jumps out, busing blues. They have Title I regulations update, future of testing, taking control of healthcare, school committee superintendent relations. So it really gives you a good perspective from experts in the field. So no one else wants it, I'll continue.
You don't mind.
Sure. It'll be an honor. It's gonna be an honor. And superintendent evaluations, maybe the last one. Yeah.
Do we just vote on that later on, or do we do that now?
No, we don't vote on them. I think we just.
I'll stay on. I've done it every year.
That's another one that you want to be on. as
Yeah.
the chair.
So Cheryl was the chair last time. Who else was on it? It was you
Tomorrow.
and Maura.
I'd like to stay on, but I mean, obviously, if Michelle's gonna be on there isn't necessarily the need to always have two handed. I mean, I'm happy to stay. Unless somebody
Sure,
else
I'll do it.
You'll do
If with Maura doesn't want it, that's fine.
So Bill, Michelle, Sean.
Yep.
Yep.
You need an alternate.
No, you really don't, because you work it around the schedule. of
Yeah,
those
you
three
just do
people.
one, they do, well, one meeting, really, right?
Right, so the next agenda item is a meeting schedule, maybe scheduling meetings. We want another meeting in July and putting some dates on the calendar for August.
So I
Isn't
suggested,
it in here somewhere?
there's a calendar in there for you. I suggested to Michelle, we have a hard time sometimes calendaring out way in advance, so that sometimes takes a long period of time. So maybe for tonight, like Michelle said, if we just maybe look at July and August, and then at another school committee meeting later on, we can really calendar it all out for everybody. Just as a reference, last year we had one every single week, so we're trying to really, during the summer, as we're getting ready for the re-entry of school, I don't necessarily think we need to do that
Yeah,
this
no, it
year.
was needed because of
Absolutely.
COVID, you know, but
And
this
it was
year,
easier, I think, because everybody was kind of already at home.
right. So I'm just starting conversation. So what do you guys think about July? Do you like to meet again in July? What about August? Anyone have any schedules where they're not around?
I'm not around for a decent amount, but I can join remotely.
Okay.
I know I'm gone at the end of August.
So the law has been changed so that you can't have remote meetings and you count as a quorum. But I believe as long as we have 4 people who show up, everyone else can be remote. And we can vote
As
remote.
long as you have
They
a
extended the law piece.
Yeah.
Oh, they
But
did?
it's still required to have a quorum in person.
Right,
Yeah,
quorum needs to be in person, the chair needs to be in person. That's the way that they've got it.
so if you weren't able to make it in person, as long as Mara can make it in person, then it's fine. You'd still get a vote and stuff, you just wouldn't share the meeting. Right?
Correct.
So if we wanted to do a meeting, I mean, it's already.
Seven.
Typically, we meet once in July, once in August. We try not to butt up against the start of school, just because
Right.
that's a hectic time. So if we did a meeting at the end of July and then maybe the middle of August.
So the only thing I want to mention is we still have the year-long agenda calendar.
Right.
Do we want to still maintain that? I know we didn't do the safety audit last year, and that was supposed to be for this month. I don't think that we would have an issue if we put it into August, but I also think it'd be good if maybe if we had that first meeting in August, maybe we started to look and consider school committee goals and try to have the goals done and in place before we start school. If
That would be
everybody
great.
agrees.
If we could say the end of July would be a discussion of the goals, and the first meeting in August would be a finalization of the goals, and then maybe the safety audit.
What if we did July 22nd?
July 22nd being, oh, what's this thing? July 22nd is a
Thursday.
Thursday. I can. All right. Actually, it was
What's that?
also the debut of Fruit Loops in Toucan City.
That sounds okay to me.
Does that keep within the first and the third Thursdays?
No, the safety audit won't be. they're
No, I'm
working on it
going to
now,
my
so that won't
calendar
be
Seven
here.
there.
o'clock start is
Yeah. Okay.
more friendly as well.
Yes, I agree.
So Cheryl's just taking a quick look to see if that'll work for her. Yeah, Thursday
At 7.
So July 22nd and
at
then
6:30.
7.
6:30. I like them earlier, but I appreciate, when your elbows deep in someone's face. I mean, it's hard to,
Thanks for that visual.
it's hard to break away, but would 6:30 be doable for you?
Can we do 7 on the 22nd? I'm coming in from the airport.
We'll do 7 on the 26th.
So can we make it an hour-long meeting so that I can not have a long drive Thursday night?
Where you going Thursday night?
I'm supposed to go away that weekend. My birthday's the following Monday.
Oh,
There you go. Happy birthday.
because his
so-
birthday was.
Just of time, so can we look at, is that what we're gonna do now?
So July 22nd, 7 PM?
Yes.
Do we want to get one more on the calendar? Do we want to do one in
August 5th?
So August 5th.
So
So
what did we
that,
say about doing,
I can't fit for the 12th.
can we do the 12th? Like, August 5th is my retreat with my admin team, the 4th and the 5th, so
Sure.
we'll be off-site for those 2 days. 12th work
and
for
back to
everybody?
school I have is the 31st.
26 is
31st, it is. Staff comes back early on the
2 days
26th.
before.
12 works.
oh, that's okay.
So do you want to say 12th and the 26th, or is that too much? Is it 26th is when the teachers come back?
Yeah.
We want to do the 25th that week? We'll just make that one exception for Wednesday.
Why don't we just set the two, and if we really feel like we need to meet a second time in August, we meet a second time in August, but I think it might be premature to decide that now. If
Okay.
That allows everybody to get into things.
I agree.
So August 12th, Pat.
6:30?
Remember, elbows deep, elbows deep,
Look,
elbows deep, that's why my sleeves rolled up.
So
I thought it was
both,
gonna tot up.
are both meetings at 7? Is that what I'm
Yeah, the
hearing?
first one's at 7, the second one's at 6:30. Come on.
Can we try to stay with consistency though? Like, so if we're gonna do one
Yeah,
on
let's do
one,
it forever at 6:30.
okay.
On July 22nd at 7, August 12th at 6:30, and what's the other one?
That's it.
That's
it.
That's it.
for now.
Pat, are you flying in from anywhere?
You
Oh,
know,
you're gonna be remote.
I'll be
You'll be in
remote.
Maine.
I was gonna say, do you need a ride?
Okay.
Don't you pick you up?
And then the format of the meetings? Are we okay with doing the hybrid?
That's what you were talking about, Sean.
Yeah.
So, as long as if you're not gonna be here, I think one of the things that I read online through the MASC is if you know you're not gonna be here, to make sure that you notify the chair,
Yeah,
because
chair
it has to be
notified
announced at the
too.
beginning of the meeting, who's in person and who's remote.
So we're keeping it as we've been.
I'll be there. Thanks.
Yes.
Yes.
That's all. No, covered.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, yep, we're good. So Director of Finance and Operations.
Alrighty. So the first item on my list is you have our regular monthly financial report. You do not have one for 2022 as of yet because we just started spending our money and it would be fairly irrelevant to give you one now. But this is, as we are starting to close things out, you will see I'm making some notations. I've grayed out some items that have traditionally been unbudgeted over the years. So if you take a look at the report, you'll see I grayed out. It's just intentional so that you don't have to, worry about those items. Anything, you'll see some items that say they're closed out. You'll see some items that are encumbrances for summer pay. So our teachers' contract year runs from September 1st to the end of August. So we encumber up their pay, we roll that into the next year. So that's money that will be rolled sort of into fiscal 22 in a manner of speaking. So that is, you'll see a number of those items. There's nothing huge. We're still, finishing the year in good shape. Pardon me. And you'll see the bottom line number is, a little lower than before because we have been trying to spend some money. There are always a few end of year surprises. Someone will turn in their mileage late or turn in a few things late, bill wise, but I expect us to be in pretty good shape in terms of money we carry over into E&D for next year. As per my note below, we definitely absolutely have to pay back the $650,000 we borrowed out of E&D. And we've again budgeted about $650,000 for next year out of E&D. So the goal is to kind of always pay that money back if we can. I strive to save money, just as I think we all should do in our personal lives. And as a steward of your finances, I'm always going to try to save money responsibly. Where we have spent money, we've spent money on some things that are investments when we can. So we have committed to, within this budget, we have committed to 2 new vans for the maintenance department. They had actually 2 vans go south on them this year. So those definitely needed to be replaced one way or the other. We've also replaced, you'll actually see a box for a large TV over there. We've found a good price on a small number of those, and we're going to be replacing some of the monitors you see for student information monitors around the district. We're also beginning to start replacing some of the projectors you'll see in conference rooms with televisions. Most of those television monitors have 10-year life cycles. They're lower cost than a projector, and a projector bulb for a lot of these projectors averages $150 to $200. So life cycle wise, some of the large screen TVs you'll see that are 65-inch and even a couple 75-inch TVs are much better investments in the long run. So while we had an opportunity to do that, we bought some of last year's models so that we managed to get a good deal on them and not break the bank. We will be also, we've been testing those right now. We will be parsing a few of those out to the schools. So we're trying to, again, act responsibly and do those things that are investments in our future and for our kids. So we've also bought some curricular items as well.
Is there any value to those?
Some, as we start to pull them down, we may look at, so
eBay.
if you come into the district office, you may see that there is one of the larger televisions is in the district office in the conference room on the wall opposite the projector. We could now take that projector down. We could provide it to a school, to classrooms until it wears out its life, or we could even try to sell it.
So even something we learned, right, so through the pandemic, right, all of our subcommittee meetings were now, that you guys just voted on, are going to be remote as well too. Like, we're not gonna have to be sitting in front of our screens like this anymore. We have to display things. It's just so much more efficient than these projectors. I know Lisa's probably shaking her head because in our classrooms, they're hard. And the bulbs are ridiculously expensive and they're hard to come by as well too. So we're just updating the technology as we need.
And what I was mentioning before, was a lot of schools I've noticed have been putting them on municipal. That's generally how municipalities, they want to get, I don't want to say get rid of something, but try to recycle or upcycle.
Yeah.
Other districts can then purchase it, either that or consider doing donations if LPVC has a need for them. I don't know if we can do it as a donation to any of their programs that might need them that can't necessarily.
But just even appreciate the wiring that goes to these things as opposed to the new flat screen. Like, look at the amount of wiring that goes. So just picture that in a classroom as opposed to the TV that we're just throwing up there and using it for.
The
So
TVs we're using will all connect wirelessly, so a laptop can instantly connect wirelessly.
So for purposes of device use, like in the front office or even in here, will you have a device that is focused or centralized to be attached? I know generally it's connected through Bluetooth, but so then that way, if you can control who has access to
Yes.
avoid any bombing or someone trying to take over ownership of the screen, it does happen where I work.
So,
I
yeah,
wanna make
so
sure.
in say a conference with the ones that are just around for student information, those will be hardwired in or they will be hard connected to a computer. The wireless ones will require network access to our networks. And we're working out the bugs as we speak. My laptop seems to be the one laptop that struggles with connecting to the darn thing. So Bill has been connecting to them like a charm all day, and I've spent the past week on and off trying to play with him. So I'm being the guinea pig a little bit as we work into it. I say that a little jokingly, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into making sure that you can securely and consistently log into a smart TV.
I think we talked about it before, and I'd like to bring it up for another meeting, Michelle, but the technology subcommittee, like Bill Powers is doing some really great work in what we've done with last year with the pandemic and the work he's doing to get us ready for the open up of school of next year. I think that might be something we want to talk about is maybe even we had that subcommittee in the past.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't our listing of things, but for a
So
future,
it was me, you and Patrick.
for a future agenda item, I just think that maybe we should talk about that and getting a committee together because there's a lot going on with technology and getting the input of school committee.
Yeah,
and
let's have the meeting.
Yep.
Let's have the.
Okay, so just something to add to the agenda for that.
So wait, are we now adding another subcommittee? Then
Again,
that
I
means
just
I
want to
think
bring it
we-
up for discussion.
Because it wasn't on, it
What if-
wasn't something we've had in the past.
That's
So
Can I offer a thought? IC technology is falling under operations. Could it fall under the finance operations subcommittee? And
Well, typically that led to those long nights where because we would start at like 4, we would have technology till 5, and then finance and operations till 6. And
I
then
believe what was done
That was
was
the way we did it.
technology
Was the
was.
three of us
Yeah.
were both.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
doubled
I
it
mean,
up.
I think just embedded in that, I mean, it is part of our operations. I mean, it's, we're talking about large Chromebook purchases every year. And that's going to impact budget, it's going to impact everything we do. We're looking at, really monumentally changing the way we deliver education.
So as we set up the agenda, it would probably be wise for us to just leave an agenda item open for technology. So that we can bring
It's
that
so,
up.
it's just so changing now, right? So for us not to have that a conversation at all of our meetings, again, Bill Powers is really been doing.
I would also, I would say that, you know, of the folks that have the most experience with it, they're sitting right there. Both Patrick and Sean have a wealth of knowledge on that, so inviting them to share that information. If we can get, Patrick, we can get you to a couple of those meetings to, you know, help let us know like what's out there and what's coming, because you guys have your ear to the ground on that much more than I do.
Great. Sorry.
The last item I'm going to mention is I am still holding the food services subsidy there. It's $30,000. It's just an amount that I've put in to cover any shortfalls. According to Julie Google, we should not have a shortfall, so she has managed to keep us in the black this year, which is astounding, which is a great job.
Yeah.
Delivery. I know she and I are going to be talking a little bit about summer meal delivery and making sure that we're meeting the needs of students sort of throughout the summer.
And that started.
Yeah.
If I could jump in and ask a question. So you were talking about LED TVs and stuff. And how much of our internal and external lights are actually LEDs and how many are not?
I think the bulk of them in this school are fluorescents right now. So they're the higher efficiency fluorescents. So there's sort of two grades of fluorescents. There's the sort of older school fluorescents that were fairly efficient. Then there was a higher end fluorescent that came in. I believe this should be all of those. Right now, sort of the call is replacing the older fluorescents with LEDs. So it's sort of leapfrogging. The call hasn't come out to replace the high efficiency fluorescents with LEDs, so where you get the subsidies. There are a number of companies, and actually Ed and I spoke with one of them the other week, that literally will do all your bulbs if you fit sort of the profile. And we're going to start looking at that.
I know Mass Save did something
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
and I know that Eversource was in the process of putting together another program.
So this company will actually just not invoice you. They come in, they do all your lighting switches, they work with Mass Saves, they get the money from the government, and they'll replace all your bulbs, and you never see an invoice. So it's kind of a nice program. If we can do it, we're going to start sort of that conversation.
So just to go, if it's okay to the chair to go back to your comment about the need for vans.
Mhm.
So I believe if they're going to be stored in Wilbraham, Wilbraham had started a green initiative
Mhm.
to have vehicles that would
Oh,
meet
yeah.
that green footprint,
Okay.
carbon, whatever.
Hmm.
I don't
Okay.
know what we get, but we as the school district had agreed to partner with them on that
Okay.
in Wilbraham. So
I'll
I
have
wasn't
that
sure if
talk
you were
to
aware
them.
of that or not.
Yeah, I'll have it talk to them. I know one is.
Sue Brunel was like, she knew all of her stuff about that
Okay.
stuff.
I will talk to Ed. It's so hard to find vans right now.
Oh, it's
or
gonna- yeah.
anything. So
Mhm.
we may just have to do what we can get right now.
Did we already
But
buy
going forward, I think I'd love to.
So looking at the warrant, it looked like there was one. about
There is
30,000
one, yeah, we
office,
bought
so
one,
already
we bought one already, and we're looking at another. So the second, we can see if there's anything out there, and I'll have to talk to the town.
I think you had to go to Connecticut, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think that one was the only one you could find was in Connecticut.
On another note, could you just talk about the meals for summer? Because I know in looking through
Mhm.
what a lot of the districts were doing,
Mhm.
we're pretty tight on our summer weeks. Are we going to expand those at all? Because I think we've got July 4th and then probably when summer school ends and.
Right, we typically line it up with summer school. I mean, summer feeding programs are not, first off, not necessarily planned to be in every single town or every single community. The idea is you can cross borders. So any student from any community who's 18 or under can come to us and feed. They can go to any surrounding town. So the intent of the summer feeding program was you could have more regional sites and regional options. But obviously with COVID, we've changed things and we're pushing that out more. Our typical sort of structure where our staff are expected to work and they're planning their summer out is for that summer school time. So I have talked to Julie Google, and she is going to talk and see if it's possible to do that, so that we could bring staff back, but we may not have staff who want to come back. It's been a very long year, just like everyone else. We've had a very hard time finding teachers.
And the window's tight between August 4th, is I think is the last meeting that she'll give you meals for the next week to 2 weeks, and school starting August 20th. So this is the continuation of that, for anyone in our community can come like we did last time with feed. So it's
Julie and
not-
I will have that conversation. I just don't know where. We'll come.
One question for you, where are we in the submission for the final numbers for certification for E&D?
For E&D for.
I got my eye on that number, I gotta know what we're working with for next year, so.
So, I mean, that certification process comes around September, October.
Yeah, I know,
So
I know
I-
previously
Yeah,
we've entered it as early as August, I know
right.
we got a
There was one
previous,
audit that came really early.
so
Last year.
Christina got it in very early last year.
Yeah.
She did an amazing job.
I think we were second or third in the state.
I managed to get, so traditionally, the finance director has done the end of year report. Christina has been taking on E&D, which is fantastic. He's trying to do both of those at the same time. It's just a nightmare. I am hopeful that she will certainly have it on time. I'm not going to push her to have it necessarily early. But I think both of us will try to get both of our reports in as early as possible. So I think they're both due at the end of either September. I know the end of your report has traditionally had an extension to October, but I don't know. But, I'm hopeful that, what you're seeing here, most of it will be going into E&D.
And that'll butt us up 2.3. We have 600.
Maybe, but then we'll also back out.
Spending
We'll
that.
also back out to 650 we'll have 650 that will be coming out. for
Jump up and then
22.
jump right back down again.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be a little bit of a wash. Any other questions on that? All right. You have a memo from me as well. So usually at the end of the year, and I put out the call to principals and staff about, what do you want to get rid of surplus? And when I did it, I didn't really think about what our policy says. Traditionally, it's something where I've gone to school committees, but I know there are policies that put that decision-making in the hands of the superintendent and or their designee. And that would be governed by policy BN. Interestingly, we don't seem to have a policy BN. So I didn't know exactly where to go with this. So it's always my goal to be transparent in the things we do. So really only one principal got me some books. I think the principals will be working over the summer to figure out what they're going to dispose of as well. So it's not like Lisa's the only person who got it to me from Sewell Road. I'm sure others will be coming. Typically textbooks don't carry a lot of value once new editions come out. Anyone who's gone to college and tried to sell textbooks back knows that pretty quickly. So I'm giving you sort of two options we can go with. One is that regardless of the option you choose, I will design a process that is transparent. So if anyone asks what you dispose of, we will always have a list of what's disposed of. We will always have an estimated value. We will always share that freely with anyone who should ask. The only difference is one would have sort of a routine disposal process through the school committee where we bring it to the school committee. The other would have either the superintendent or their designees sign off. So, if Al wanted to designate that to me, I would get a report of what a principal decided they were going to discard. I would sign off on it. Anything of actual tangible value, so that we had something such as a projector that we did not need anymore and it held a tangible value. There are Chapter 30B regulations around sale of products. So we could then sell it in a free exchange in accordance with Chapter 30D regulations. So I would then follow those requirements as well. So either way, we would be following the legal requirements. It's just a matter of whether the school committee wants its stamp on it, which it has a right to do, or if you would prefer to delegate that.
I make motion to accept option 2.
He made it, he said he made a motion to accept option 2.
That's
Sorry,
to
I missed
delegate the responsibility.
Wouldn't this be something that we need a policy on?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's other things that we've made, taken votes on that we don't specifically have a policy on.
I
We
would,
can come up with one.
as we engage policy, this year, I'd be happy to provide some sample policies in accordance with. I would
Did it
write a
project a little
policy.
bit because our.
I mean,
Sorry.
It's raining.
So I would, but there are a number of model policies through MASC. I would choose a few model policies. I might share them with the policy subcommittee. And maybe reword them in accordance with, whatever process we want to follow. And then ask that to go through the policy process.
So do you want to put this vote off until we have a policy meeting and we can establish something?
I don't believe you need to.
I don't think we do, but
And my recommendation would be option 2 as well too, only because for the experience here, some of these things, and I would hate to lock jam the entire school committee by bringing stuff to you guys that we're trying to get rid of it. And just hoping that you know that we'll use that discretion when we're getting rid of it.
but even something like that, I think could go through the curriculum sub. So if you're gonna report it out, the curriculum sub thought that it was, I don't need to shout, I just want to make sure that people can hear.
Right.
That if curriculum sub thought it was an important piece of information, they could bring it back and report on it at the committee meeting. It wouldn't put on you guys.
That was my question. These are basically.
Yes, we already have it. So these are, so the newest of the textbooks in this lot go back to 2012, and those have already been. So nothing we're using, picking up closet space, only scares me to go to school. Things like that. Where teachers and educators are back class, they hang on to everything.
We do. From a budgetary perspective, the issue is we delegate the day-to-day operations of the district here. Our job is to set a total budget number based on your recommendation. Just let us watch off. Let's vote. Let's please.
Yes.
Now, Laura seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I will work on getting the policy subcommittee.
Either that or I could look onto the MASC, because they have a whole bunch.
That's exactly right.
It's really what I was doing in the last one, and there's so many other policies that we have to finish.
I'm not going to fight you for that.
That's okay. But I'll send you what I see and see what you think, that's all.
And that's cool. We're gonna even have a policy in place for it. We should have had one for years, right? So it's.
And you can just go to the MASC website, and search for DN. I'm done. Thank you.
So good evening. Not that there's too much to report since the last time we met 2 weeks ago. I just want to tell you that we officially started summer school this past Tuesday, July 6th. So I know gave you a report about that.
You just need to make it wait, but
You guys want to sit up there? Might be easier.
I also started.
Do not,
Projecting
do
out.
not, do not run. Make a run for it. Are we safe? Where's the public?
Yeah. It just says rain, it doesn't say lightning. It just says rain.
Okay, so, good evening. Not that I have much to report on since the last time, 2 weeks ago. officially started summer school, like I said, yesterday, July 6th, we're using 3 buildings. I would make you aware, we're using Mountie, as we know, for one of our summer schools. We're using TWB. This past week, we're also using Green Meadows.
It's okay, you're not headed back to people, don't worry about it, you can't really hear.
You guys,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay. So this past week, we've also started using Green Meadows, in case you start seeing students arriving there as well too. We're using Green Meadows because there's been an issue with the Parks and Rec program in Camden. And so we offered to use Green Meadows School for sites. So this past week, we're using that as a site as well. So these sites we're using this summer, Mile Tree, TWB, Green Meadows, and so far it's going really well. We're happy about that. The second thing I want to make you aware of, this past week we had right in this room here a luncheon for our custodial staff. They did, and I know you guys have acknowledged that. They did phenomenal work this past year, keeping our buildings safe, keeping our teachers safe, and our students safe. So we treated them to a nice little lunch on behalf of all of the district to thank them, and also in preparation for them getting ready for next year. Just so you know, according to the commissioner, we are not going to have the restrictions in place for COVID next year. So what the custodians really want to know is preparing for the start of next year. Can they remove the tape? Can they remove the signs? Can they remove all the arrows? And the answer I gave them this past week was yes. So you're going to start seeing that all taken up. I got to be honest with you as well too, as Aaron has noted, we have a surplus of all that. We have a surplus because we're smart, fought ahead. So we certainly, if we had to go up and had to replenish those again and use those again, we have those restored wallets that we need. But it was a really nice event to really acknowledge the work that our custodial staff and our second health has been doing. Next thing I just want to bring your attention to, I promise that for each school committee meeting is our kindergarten numbers. We're getting a little concerned, I want to make you aware of it. Mile Tree right now has 131 kindergarten students with 7 classrooms. There's 18 per classroom. I know we've always been focusing on Mile Tree. My real concern right now is at Green Meadows. Green Meadows, we have 46 students in our kindergarten, 2 kindergarten classrooms, so it's 23 in each kindergarten class. I'm already having that conversation with Sharon Holberg. I'm already having that conversation with Aaron Osborne about looking at that number. I also got to tell you, this is my opportunity to talk to you about, the strategic plan and the work we're going to be doing with reorganization. When I talk about the staffing at Green Meadows, when I talk about the staffing at Mile Tree, I could possibly be looking at hiring a kindergarten teacher at Mile Tree and a kindergarten teacher at Green Meadows. When if we didn't have those town lines, be able to cross our town lines, we would only have to really hire 1 kindergarten teacher and divert those kids. When you're looking at that, again, 1 or 2 more kids at Green Meadows is going to bring that number up to a number that we're not comfortable with. But yet, if I was to divert some of those kids to go, if we had a kindergarten, pre-K type of center, we'd be able to have lower numbers all the way across. That's just my little plug for the future and our reorganization as well. But just know that we're concerned about our numbers at Green Meadows. It's a good thing. We're glad that we're having a bump in our enrollment in Hampton. We want to continue that as well. And I'll keep you updated. I'll be meeting with Sharon and Aaron this week to look at the hiring process of another kindergarten as well too. I'll keep you updated. The other thing that you want to be aware of is that grade 5 students moving up that Sioux Road. Right now, there's 152 students in that grade 5 classroom. 150 total. There are 7 classrooms designated right now. We have that 1.0 FTE, but at 8 if we need it at Sioux Road. But right now, at grade 5, with 152 with 7 classrooms, there's about 21 students per classroom, which we're still really comfortable with at that level right now. But I have that position, like I called it, in block, right, if I need that as well. I'm looking at my numbers constantly, and how their kids are moving in.
So that's the class that's had issues since.
That's right,
Here.
That's right. So right now, there's 21 students in all of those 5th grade classes right now.
But didn't they have 8 last year?
We do have 8. We still have that 1 FTE teacher, but we're looking at where other numbers might be, because we're starting to see a little increase in our 4th grade coming in from 3rd grade to 4th grade. A lot of students that were homeschooled last year, or homeschooled that moved into our district, are now increasing our enrollment. We're seeing those kids coming in. So we have, and I told you this in the past, I want to keep a teacher in pocket. I'm not really sure where I'm going to need that at this point, but I'm paying attention to that. And that'll be the conversation I'll be having with the principals.
When will you decide that?
this next couple of weeks are pivotal weeks for enrollment. But to be honest with you, it's that August time, that first week in August, where we really get the large enrollment, but we gotta do the hiring at the end of July. Conversation with Sharon Holbrook is gonna be happening early part of next week about the kindergarten position that we got. Okay, next thing, just, we're scheduled for Mars, and I think I told you a little bit earlier, they're gonna begin working with our admin team, on August 4th, a little before them coming in, and we'll be doing the work, that we need to do at the district-wide, and doing the SWOT analysis there, and then moving forward as that as well.
Now, can you establish what the procedure will be or the process for getting community members?
Not
What
yet.
they're looking at?
Not yet. We did have a conversation with Dawn Davenport this week, and I think Bill's gonna talk to you a little bit more about that in the executive session, but one of the conversations we had with Dawn is about, about how we're gonna, ask people to join us for the strategic plan. And what Mars has asked us to do is pick point people that then they can help us. So one of the persons that for him will be Dawn Davenport. So Mars will reach out to Dawn, I'm using on the example, say, Dawn, help us from your community, pick the people that you want to be in. So it's not the superintendent, it's not Mars, it's not school committee choosing, but it's those point people. Same thing will happen with the select board in Wilbraham. They'll reach out and say, who do you want to be involved with this? And you help us with that process.
Thank you.
Great. And the last thing I just wanted you guys to be aware of, when we're talking about subcommittees, I should have told you this earlier, we've also this year put point people in charge for your subcommittees as well too, that you can work with at the district level. When we're talking about budget, it's obviously Aaron Osborne. When we're talking about curriculum, Lisa Burke, that'll be that person that you work with at the district level. Policy, we're gonna make sure that we're consistent with Gina Roy, that we put policy on the subcommittee. In negotiations, will be a shared responsibility of the entire district. That's will be 5 bargaining groups that we work. That's it. That's all I have for this potential report, unless there's any questions. Okay. Yep, so next week is the conference for all superintendents to get together for our professional learning with the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. That's Monday through Friday of next week. I will be in district on Monday. We have a couple of meetings. We have an admin meeting, so I will be going down there late on Monday. But Tuesday through Friday, I will be out of district at that conference. But Aaron Osborne will be here and overseeing the district during that time. Questions?
How about change of placement?
So there has not been a final, so what Mara asked about the replacement for the administrative assistant for Kate Belsky, we narrowed it down to, say, right? So there's 2 candidates that narrowed it down to. One was Ronnie Mendoza, who you are familiar with, and the other one is Erin Downing, sorry, slipped my mind for a second. Erin Downing, who is the admin assistant at Sewell Road. They had a final interview with me this past week as well too. I have not made that final decision yet, and so I'm still working on that as well too.
I just only because we're now beyond
Yep.
July 1st
Yep.
and we'll only have Kate for another month.
Yep, Kate's last day will be August 30th for her. Not that a smile on your face, Kate. Any other questions for? Great, thank you.
There is no consent agenda on the agenda. Thank you.
That would have been me, sorry about that.
But we do, I think also we have other warrants, right?
So I created this agenda, so I obviously missed it.
Obviously.
Given the hour and the fact that we've got 3 topics in executive session, we want to move the update on school committee goals to a future meeting, like 7:22.
I can do that. I'm fine with that, except that I would like an answer to my question with the question on whether or not the school committee still supports this for the audit within the strategic plan.
I think that's something that should be a posted agenda item for you to take.
I think that's a requirement of one of the things, if you're gonna take a vote, it should be on the agenda, but you have the right to ask for it to be added to a future meeting.
No, unless there was if there was no Like, she didn't know that it would require a vote because she was under the impression that it was already voted on. So when she found out at this meeting that it wasn't voted on, so therefore she can bring it up.
No, I was just saying she can
Yeah.
ask what you put on a future meeting.
Or she can ask for a do vote.
And up now, we have so many people in our community who are on both sides of this. And I was under the impression that by passing our goals and by passing in the revised one that actually said equity audit, and then by passing the JBP, where it says the superintendent shall include equity practices in the district's strategic plan and goal strategies to implement this policy. I don't know how you figure out what your district equity practices are if you don't do an equity audit, if you don't do a deep dive to find out where your vulnerabilities are and where your strengths are. So I'd like to make a motion through the chair.
But
Yeah.
using the words of JVB, it does not say, and I think JVB is very well written and everyone should read it. And I think it's a very strong statement on what a district, what we have accepted in our district. But it does not say that JVB constitutes an equity audit occur.
Absolutely, it doesn't say that. That's why I want to see if, it's very simple, I just want to see is, am I the only one on the committee? And it could be that I'm the only one on the committee pushing this hard, but I'd like to see where people stand at this point, because our strategic plan is starting. Our Mars people have already put it on their strategic plan that they want an equity audit alongside it to, one will enhance the other. And one without the other is incomplete. But I just want to know, is this something that we're going to do? Because if not, I'm going to stop working on this because it's taking tremendous amount.
I personally would rather not vote on this without Sean's guidance, Sean Sweeney, that is, because I don't think we should be voting on it because it's not a posted item. And I think this is something that should be posted item for after.
I make a motion to have the equity, to encourage the superintendent to go forth with the equity audit as an information gathering on where we stand in our community regards to equity among our students and teaching population.
But didn't she already make a motion and we waited to see?
Oh, I don't know.
Second it?
I don't think it was second.
I don't think she didn't make a motion. I didn't hear her. She said she
I
wanted
was
to
told
make
I
a motion.
couldn't do it, so I stopped talking.
Well, where did you get?
So equity audit for information gathering to
See where we stand in our community with regards to equity among our students and each population. Or just among our population, that's right.
Could you read the motion again?
to encourage the superintendent to go forth with equity audit for information gathering to see where we stand in our community among our population.
With regards to equity among the population.
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion. Sorry.
Well,
I think all of these meetings are parents, our school population is asking, where do we stand? And I, even if the answer is yes or no, I think we deserve the amount of time and thought people have put in to come to us and say, this is what I think about this. I think they deserve an answer as to where we stand.
I just gotta say one thing, Kate, just for a policy, like, how are we voting on something that's not on the agenda? When we talk about that all the time, if it's something that we're gonna be voting on, we should be letting the community know we're voting on this. And it's nowhere on the agenda that says you're voting on it. And I'm just putting that out for food for thought for all of us. So
To what Sean just said, you have the right during at the meeting to add something to the agenda as long as we, the committee, vote to add it as an item to be voted on. I'm correct in understanding that Robert's rule
Yeah.
requirement.
It was basically, if you have a reasonable, it's like, it should be on the agenda if this is something that we reasonably should have known about it a week or so ago. The reason why it's not on the agenda and it's being brought up as a vote now is because Cheryl specifically was saying that it was supposed to be on the, there it goes. All meeting minutes of
Well,
the.
not that, the next word.
The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting.
Which,
Not
when,
all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law.
and where the chair, we didn't have a chair and they weren't involved in the agenda, I would find this to be a venue which that conversation or vote could take place.
I agree.
Past 3 meetings we've had, I think it's an hour and 15 minutes or so of public comment. So to think that it wasn't reasonably expected that this would come up, I really struggle voting. I just don't think it's the appropriate way to do it. I think it should be a posted agenda item and it should be voted on July 22nd.
because respectfully, between now and July 22nd, whether you vote all in favor of this policy or not, I'm not really going to be able to do much with it, right? That we're not going to go off and starting an equity audit in the next week or so. So I just,
I would also invite us in that time to contact Mac Reed, who is heading up the strategic plan for our district, and get his input on, if this is something that is done, how does it roll into it? What are the guidance, what kind of guidance can he give us as far as doing it? They said they've done it with groups in the past. I would be interested to know how they did that. I think that's I would hate to hand somebody a contract for something and then basically commit them to doing something in there which is automatically going to divert what it is that they're focused on onto a specific area. Again, the strategic plan looks at the entire district, right? Every single corner of what we do. And so if we're going to move forward with an equity audit, as we said, the equity audit would be part of the, part of the strategic plan. As I've said many times, I'm not opposed to doing an equity audit. I am opposed to the concept of pushing this without getting sort of the more global view of the strategic plan. And we try to remember the strategic plan is, it's not a one-off. Like a strategic plan is something that you work on over the course of the year, and then it's constantly being revisited, constantly being updated. It's your working model for what you're doing. So what I would like to see is I'd like to see the beginnings of the equity audit. Let's begin those discussions, and maybe rather than just coming in and say, okay, we're going to do an equity audit, are there specific areas that we need to focus on for equity? Is it?
How do you know what those areas are unless you do an audit?
Well, because the strategic plan is informing what
But
it
the
is. you're doing.
strategic plan, they've already told us, does not include the equity audit. We said that, we do not do equity audits. And then Al said
Correct.
that what the strategic plan does is it comes up what we should be focusing on. And if it's not on the equity, if it's not on the strategic plan, then it's something that we shouldn't focus on. And right now, the way Al has it set up right now, the equity audit is not part of the strategic plan. He says, if it comes up as a strategic plan that they say you need to do an equity audit, then we can do an equity audit. But I'm thinking that as a community, I think it's something we just need to know where we stand. We need to know what's going on in this community. Because I've heard things, we've all heard things of, students walking around with or a student walking around with a Hitler mustache, in school and stuff like that. And there's other things that have happened. And I find that shocking, as most people here, I'm sure do. I'd like to see what, is it really an issue or is it not really an issue? Was it one student one day and it's not an issue, or is it, yeah, there's an issue, and an audit will tell us where we stand amongst our schools and our community.
And an audit goes far, an equity audit just doesn't tackle race.
No, I understand,
It
yeah.
tackles so many things.
No, I understand, I absolutely understand that. I guess,
But
Phil, I
Sean's
guess,
right about the, Mars does not want to tackle the equity audit, but they want an equity audit to inform and so that they can bridge the two in the equity audit. And they were very clear in saying that.
I didn't get that from Mac's presentation. What I got from Mac's presentation was that there are a number of facets that we look at within the school district that we can tend to focus on in a strategic plan. He had listed several things on a bullet slide. I agree with Patrick. I think that it's, if we're going to do a vote on it, I think that it should be an agenda item. I think that people should be allowed to participate in, in viewing that. I don't think a lot's going to happen between now and July 22nd. And in the meantime, I think it would be wise of us to contact Mars, let them know this is the direction that, some of the members of the committee are headed, and to try to get some guidance from them as far as, how this impacts the strategic plan. I think I would make a motion to table this until we get some clarification.
Second.
The only thing I'd say about that is Mac specifically said in the call when we had him on that he welcomed doing that at the same time.
Yep.
That while it wasn't something that they specialized in, they welcomed having that, working with whomever we chose
Right.
to have that be an
Yes.
inclusion to the strategic plan.
So my objection is solely based off the appropriateness of this, and I'm going to read from the MassGov website with a question: may a public body consider a topic at a meeting that was not listed in the meeting notice? Yes, if it is a topic that the chair did not reasonably anticipate 48 hours before the meeting. If a meeting topic is proposed after the meeting notice is posted, the public body is encouraged to update its posting to provide the public with as much notice as possible of what subjects will be discussed during a meeting. Although a public body may consider a topic that was not listed in the meeting notice if unanticipated, the Attorney General strongly encourages public bodies to postpone discussion and action on topics that are controversial or may be of particular interest to the public if those topics were not listed in the meeting notice. Based off the prior 3 meetings, I certainly would say that this conversation would fit into that category of controversial or maybe of particular interest to the public.
After hearing that, I agree with you. I will withdraw my motion and.
You didn't make the motion. The motion's been seconded. It's
Did I
motion
make the
carried.
motion?
No, Sean did.
Sean did.
Sean did.
And you seconded it.
I'm sorry.
So you can't vote on the motion. You have to vote
You have
the
to vote on the
motion,
motion.
but you have to vote on the tabling first. So you can leave the motion alive as long as you vote to table it.
The other part, it's sort of optics, right? So this has been something I think Patrick Rose said, for the last 3 school committee, people have come and spoken, and they've asked you to vote or asked you to get your input on it. And all of a sudden, on Wednesday night at 9:35, you pass this vote when a lot of the community has already left. So I think that the right thing to do for whatever reason, for just the word that we all like using, transparency of it, is to do it and post it as an agenda.
I agree. I did try to get it earlier.
I know.
So what's the Robert rules to do this the proper voting way? So
you're
you made a
Simply
motion.
vote.
So what supersedes my motion is Bill's motion to table.
Okay, so do we have to vote on his
So
motion?
his motion was seconded by Patrick. So right now the motion on
So it's a roll call?
Michelle, it's a roll call vote on Bill's motion to table the motion.
Bill, did you include a date for that?
Till the
Table
next
it
meeting.
until.
July 22nd.
Table it until the next meeting.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
And I'll reach out to Mars to get some more clarification, because that's what my instructions are. You guys?
Yes, please.
Okay, gotcha.
If you have time.
Yep, absolutely. Good. So we're tabling school committee goals, is that correct? So,
I think we determined that was gonna be August.
And then the safety and security was gonna be, July 22nd was, we're gonna start the school committee goals and then finish them in August. And then in
Yeah.
August, when we finish up the school committee goals, we're gonna talk about the safety and security audit. Now, that safety and security audit has to be done in executive session, correct?
Correct.
what's that? Sorry.
The safety and security audit has to be done in executive session.
That's correct.
And we're doing that, which you said July 22nd?
So they're doing.
August, yeah.
I just wanna make sure I have the right date written down. Because
Well, what do we say, August 8th was what, 12?
Yes.
Yeah.
I at 7 o'clock, right, Sean?
6:30.
6:30.
Stop. Go ahead.
Are there any other future agenda items? So then we move to we will be moving to executive session. Executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically Mass General Law C 214, Section 1B, Massachusetts Student Records Law, Mass General Law C 71, Section 34D, Massachusetts Student Records Regulations 603 CMR 23 at
Secretary.
and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. FERPA. 20 USC Section 1232G and 34 CFR Part 99 regarding student transfer requests, an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigations, including Town of Hampden et al. Versus Hampden Wilbraham Regional School District et al., and any other claims by former employee if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body and chair so declares. Do I-
Make a motion.
And then we will
Second.
be returning.
And we,
to adjourn.
okay, we will only be returning to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Laura?
Aye.